right, good evening, everybody. It is 5:30. We will get started here tonight, November 16th, 2023, our normal business meeting for the month of November. As we get started here tonight, I do want to take a minute to recognize the passing of a very popular, longtime, much beloved teacher at Souhegan. Tom Sawyer passed away last weekend. He was a Wilkins alum, but he was certainly more associated with this town and with Souhegan. 30 years almost at Souhegan as a teacher. A very unexpected death at a young age at his house this last weekend. So to honor Tom and recognize his family, we will pause for a moment of silence and extend our thoughts to his wife and his family. It was going to be just an unbearable time. All right, thank you. And certainly our thoughts go out to the Souhegan community and all the teachers and staff that worked with Tom, especially those that worked with him for quite a long time. I know schools are really any workplace, but schools in particular develop that family mentality. So I imagine it's been a rough week over at Souhegan this week as well, especially with the holidays coming right up. So our thoughts are with those folks and certainly with his family as well. So as we get started tonight, Terry Beam is in attendance. She will be here momentarily. Jason White is not available tonight. He is chaperoning a trip on his day job with another school. So Jason will join us for our December meetings. December 5th, we'll have a facilities only meeting. And then December 19th, I believe it is. Don't hold me to the date. I'll look it up as we talk. But our regular business meeting the week before Christmas as well. He is expected to be back for that. So just wanted to address Jason's absence, and Terry is here now as well. So you're fine, Terry, no rush. As we get started tonight, we'll open it up for our first of two public comment sessions on the night. If you'd like to come up to the microphone, if you're in person tonight, you can have 3 minutes at the microphone. And then we will also have opened it up for folks that are listening on Zoom tonight. The instructions for Zoom public comment are in there. You need your camera on, your name and your avatar, and then you can raise your virtual hand if you'd like to speak. We do have quite a few folks in here tonight, so I am going to be a little militant on that 3-minute limit just to make sure that we can get to everybody that needs to speak. And then additionally, we can get to the rest of our agenda. We will have a public comment session at the end of the meeting as well, if we need that later on this evening to get started. So with that, I will open the floor up for our first of the public comment sessions. And we'll do that at 5:33. I will say that when you sit down, if you want to turn on that microphone on the bottom, there should be a button. A light should come on. It's either going to be red or no. If you flip it over, the microphone itself is not on. We always seem to.
I was just challenged by this one, so.
Yeah, but if you don't talk on the microphone, it doesn't go to the folks listening at home or on the recording.
Oh, and I give you mine.
It's just like being in school.
You can say your name and town of residence, and you'll have 3 minutes.
Thank you. Betsy Kellendorfer, Melody Lane, Amherst, New Hampshire. Good evening. I am here in reference to the discussion on having the district make up missed snow days. Having raised 4 children and being a teacher here in Amherst, I feel I can add some value to this discussion. In preparing this statement, I started by going to the SAU website and found a document there that had this information in it in reference to school policy. It said, "We believe it is the responsibility of the school to promote an atmosphere of mutual trust and respect, resulting in a lifelong commitment to learning and the pursuit of excellence. As you're debating on the merits of extending the school year in order to increase learning time, I would like you to consider that statement. Please respect the students and staff who have worked hard all year, already gone above the required number of hours, and completed all of the requirements as far as curriculum and state testing. Please respect the fact that children do not need to be in school to be learning. Time away from school is just as important as time in school, especially for our younger learners. The experiences they have during their school vacation time are an important part of their development. Fred Rogers said, and I quote, "Play is often talked about as if it were a relief from serious learning. But for children, play is serious learning. Play is really the work of childhood." End quote. We need to respect this work that children are doing. Please respect the fact that students and staff cannot effectively work in classrooms that are 85 degrees with only teacher-purchased fans to try and cool down the room. This only circulates hot air over sweaty bodies. Students cannot focus when they are physically miserable, and the chances of these hot days only increases the later into June that we go. And if you have any doubt, I invite you, come into Wilkins on these hot days. Come sit in our classrooms. See what it's like to be an 8-year-old in a room with 20 other hot, miserable children being asked to continue to work beyond the time that you thought you would. Please respect parents who need to make childcare or family plans for the summer. This is difficult to do when the last day of school is not known when you need to be making those plans. Please respect the teachers that you have put your faith in to know that having us make up snow days will not result in effective learning. In fact, it may just have the opposite effect of challenging and engaging all learners, which I believe is part of the district mission. And lastly, please respect the good faith contract that was agreed upon. Thank you.
Thank you, Betsy.
Good evening.
Yeah, when you're ready.
I'm Christopher Kasky, town of Amherst on Old Lantern Way. And I just want to talk for a minute about the term "what's best for kids." It's often used with teachers to make sure we're keeping students at the forefront of our planning and our preparation. It means we need to have conversations and ask ourselves this question: what is best for kids, as we analyze data and work towards supporting students in the way that they need. Unfortunately, it is also feels like it started to be used as a statement against teachers. We're not willing to do what's best for kids, when really all we're doing is asking for what we were promised during the last 2 years of our negotiations. Is sitting in a room in June past time that's 85 to 90 degrees or hotter good, what's best for kids? I wouldn't say it is. What's best for them is that their teachers are working their hearts out throughout the entire year to make sure that they're making progress, no matter how many hours or days we're there. Mike Barry, you recently said in a staff meeting that we will never hear you say that less instructional time is good for kids. And I would just want to state to the board that the people opposing making up snow days are not saying that we want less instructional time for our children. What we are saying is that the instruction can happen and does happen on an unexpected day off from school is just as important as the instruction that happens going on in the classroom. A day where my family as a family can play together, cook together, experience different things together that we weren't expecting to have to deal with in a different environment, that is valuable. I also understand that unexpected snow days are difficult for parents that work outside the school system. I grew up in that household. However, I do believe that those should still be looked at as a positive. As parents, we are given such a short amount of time to raise our children, and any extra time with them is a gift. So as a parent and an educator, I would say that the perspective of the board, or at least what is being presented, is
30 seconds.
flawed.
You know.
Let's stop calling it less instructional time and start viewing it as an opportunity for a different kind of instruction to happen for all of us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else in person tonight? Come right up, guys. If you want to grab the chair on the end there, if you're both going to speak, grab that chair so you can both sit down and be comfortable, or that one right behind you. And then whoever's going to speak, just put the microphone right in front of you, just so we can hear you nice and loud. And then we can take time to switch after. So when you're ready, say your name and your town of residence.
I'm Emily Ziriak from Amherst. I'm Caitlin Ziriak, also from Amherst.
Is Emmeline or Emily?
Emily.
Emily. So if you want to pull the mic a little bit closer, Emily, I'll start your time over again, just so you have the 3 minutes. And when you're ready, and then we can go to your sister.
I want to talk about the 1, 2, 3, 4 grading system and why I think it should be changed. This is why we need to change our grading system from the 1, 2, 3, 4 system to the ABCDF system. No teachers grade using it the same, Another reason is it's not good for colleges. And finally, because it's confusing to everyone.
Our first example for no teacher using it the same is a one to my current math teacher is doing everything right, just not showing work. A one to my teacher last year was turning in a blank paper. Another example is one of Emily's teachers was explaining how she was going to grade a test. She said 100% was a 4. A 4 was described to both me and Emily as going above and beyond.
Our example of why the 1, 2, 3, 4 system is not good for colleges is we have to translate the 1, 2, 3, 4 grades into A, B, C, D, F grades because no other schools use our system, and because it is so complicated, it could get messed up. Although we cannot speak much on college because we are middle school students.
Our last reason for why the grading system should be changed is it is confusing to everyone. For example, once Emily brought a paper home, it was 100% correct and it was a 3. Our parents asked why it wasn't a 4 because their understanding was 100% was equal to a 4, just like 100% is equal to an A+.
In conclusion, ABCDF is a much better grading system than the 1, 2, 3, 4, and should be changed because it's easier to understand, colleges use it, and it's the standard.
Thank you, guys. Anybody else in person tonight? Okay, seeing none, I will open it up online. I don't see any hands raised there. So we will close public comment for now. And we will move on to the next agenda item that we have here tonight, which is the one that I think primarily everybody's here to listen. Oh, I'm sorry, we're not gonna do that yet. We're gonna cover up two things quickly. First off, we have our consent agenda. I will take a motion to accept our consent agenda as presented tonight with just 3 items in it.
I move to accept the consent agenda.
Thank you, Tim. Anybody for a second? But if that's what you're trying to do, I'll take it as a second if you
Yeah,
want to.
I will second.
Any questions for admin or any further conversation?
I have a question about the minutes.
Good.
So we have there are a couple of things that need to be changed in the draft minutes from our last meeting. There was a name of a public commenter misspelled, so I would amend the I don't know if do we need to amend the motion though, or is it? Okay, so there's that. Okay, so great. So we have that. And then I have a question about and new here.
Well, actually, I think I know what your question is, about what's included and stuff. Yeah, well, we've already talked about that. I talked to Mike about that, so we're good with that one going forward. So.
Okay, I don't know.
Yeah, I can fill you in that one after. So.
Okay. Okay.
Any other questions?
Nope.
Okay. So I will take the vote. All in favor of passing the consent agenda as amended with Shannon's, would we make an amendment? We did.
Yeah.
But she wanted to make sure that we
That we had the correction.
commenters correction.
Yeah.
So as long as those get added to the minutes, we're good.
Well, so those the nay? Perfect. So all in favor of passing it as is then?
Aye.
1, 2, 3, 4. Shannon?
I abstain.
Okay, Shannon abstains. Anybody against? You're abstaining. Okay, good. Next up is the reports that Mike presented that were in the consent agenda, the Clark, Wilkins, and Amherst Middle School principals reports. New this year, just to be respectful of their time. We're not going to have the principals at every meeting. These create for extra long days for them, so we will have them at sporadic meetings. This is one of the ones where they're not here, so if we have any questions on that, we can certainly follow with Mike and with the admins directly in the building. October facilities reports, and then September and October reports. Any questions anybody wanted to bring up on that? Anything they needed to cover? Okay. All right. So next item is going to be the one that I was alluding to before, our discussion on school start times, not school start times, excuse me. That's maybe down the road. That's a different story for tonight. So this one is about the snow and weather days in our district. So just to present what we're going to talk about tonight, it's a conversation about one specific topic, and that is the board reverting back to the language that's in the contract regarding section 13.3 subset D. And that current contract language reads 175 days of student instruction during the 23-24 school year, and then 176 days during the 24-25 school year and every year thereafter. And then in parentheses, it says the board may waive up to 5 of these days for school cancellations due to weather. So our conversation tonight is centered on that final sentence. It's that the board may waive up to 5 of those days for school cancellations due to weather. So the conversation tonight is not about us definitively making up every single snow day. It's not a conversation about us saying that we will continue to waive the snow days tonight. It's not a conversation, I should say that we'll do so without any further conversation later in the year. It's just a conversation about the board being able to take back what that contract language says and giving it back to the board authority to be able to waive snow days as we go through the year, as opposed to leaving it in the superintendent's hands or building administrator's hands. This is something that is in the board's purview. And this is just the conversation tonight about the board taking back those privileges. So I will invite the AEA leadership up if you'd like to come up to the microphone, Grant and Amy. I will open it up to any initial thoughts from board members, and then you can sit there if you want to grab one of those mics too, just so you have 2 of them there.
So,
Yeah,
Yeah.
I just sat so I could see the screen because I know we have presentations.
so I'm new here, but the way this worked in Conval was we would get to a certain point in March or April where, it was like, well, are we going to have more snow days? Where are we on that? And then the superintendent would make a recommendation to the board that says, here's where I think the last day of school needs to be. And then the board would vote and essentially could take the administration at their recommendation or say, no, this is when that is. How is this different than that? Because nothing in that language suggests to me it's any different than that.
And I think that's the conversation that we're having tonight. I think there's some, and I think the AEA, I'll put words in their mouth, but there's some ambiguity there. There's what we've done in this district that is not legally a past practice, but it's what we've done in the district in the past, that we've waived those snow days without really the board getting involved in those conversations. And so I think that it's not a policy because it's not a change in the contract language.
So this is really more of a conversation explaining what is actually the responsibility of the board in negotiating that contract, not a superintendent, and executing that contract, which is the board, not the superintendent.
Correct.
However, that may have ever happened in the last 5, 10, or 12 or 42 years.
Correct. And my understanding, my thoughts on this is this is the board honoring that language and taking back the authority that language grants the board, is to be able to waive 5 snow days if we choose to. This year, school ends on a Wednesday. June 12th is the final day. So would it make sense if we had 3 snow days to come back on a Monday for a 3-hour session? Probably not. But would it make sense to take advantage of a Friday, Saturday, and a full day, Thursday, Friday, and then the full day on that Wednesday? To me, that makes sense. This board has made educational time, increasing instructional time, a priority the last couple of years. That was in our contract this year that we negotiated to add the extra day starting next year, and then to pull back those late start days in 2025 and then 2026. Doing so by adding professional development days prior to the year. I think it's just prior to the year, right? See if it's not during the year. Those PD days that we negotiated, we talked about adding those. The intent is to do them at the beginning of the year. So I think that's where we sit on that, is being able to have the authority and taking back that authority to be able to waive those days as we see fit. Shannon, Terry?
So I shared some of my thoughts at the last meeting. I think right now I'd like to hear what the representatives who we've invited to join us have to say. And then I'd like to have some further discussion there. And I just want to clarify, Tom, what are you looking for from us tonight in terms of, like, are we taking some sort of action or motion? Are you looking to gain consensus around? I mean, the language in the contract is what it is. So I'm just a little unclear, I guess, on what the end.
No, I think it's just an acknowledgement that the board is going to take that authority back, unless somebody wants to go through and say, hey, I disagree with this. I don't think that we should do this. We should continue to honor it. I think it's just more of a statement declaring that we're going to take back that authority and be able to waive those days if there's consensus among the board. If everybody here looks at me and says, that's the stupidest idea I've ever heard, then I think that we would, we could still take that authority, but it's probably not going to go anywhere. But I think that it's just more of a statement that we're going to take that authority back and have the privilege, if you will, of being able to truly waive those days, having the option of waiving those days.
Okay, yeah, so I'd like to have a discussion, but I want to listen.
I grant, I can.
You're just handing something in.
So I brought something to help out with this conversation.
Thank
Just a little bit of information.
Thank you.
Granted, his homework. Like it.
So thank you very much for inviting us. Really appreciate it.
Mic on?
Is it on? No?
Yeah, so I turn it over. Is it on?
Yeah.
I think it's on. Sorry.
Thanks. Appreciate that. So, yeah, thank you. And I just want to say too, that I really appreciate the fact that you guys value so much of what all those people do. That you would like to have us do it all year round. I mean, I think that's really nice. But there are some issues, Tom, that you mentioned that we definitely need to clarify, because I think, well, let me just start with this. I see over there Jen Eccleston. And say Jen Eccleston, let me just put this out there. She decides she's a fantastic math teacher at Clark Wilkins. Say she decides she wants to start her class at August 1st. She wants to email the parents, have them all drop their kids off. She's going to hold class starting October 1st and end April 30th. Can she do that? My response to that is no. As much as I'd like to let her do it as long as she wants, because she's fantastic. She can't do that. If I woke up tomorrow and say, 3 personal days, that doesn't work for me. I'm going to take 4. Can I do that? No. I can't just take back language. It's there for a purpose. And the whole point is that this CBA that we have, this certified bargaining agreement, is just that. It's an agreement between you, the board, and us, your employees. And we can't unilaterally change any aspect of it without talking to you first. And fundamentally, that's what this comes down to, because I am going to talk about how what Amherst has done for the last decade is a legal past practice, because in the folder, you're going to find a few artifacts. Some of you are already perusing it. First is just a letter I sent to Mike, and I wanted to make sure the board had that. They wanted to be aware of clearly what our feeling was on the issue. And another artifact that's in there is Adam's Slack message, which you got a month ago. I just wanted to make sure that was in there too. Also, in one of the emails that I sent the board, there was a lot of numbers, and sometimes when you put numbers in with words, it kind of gets all jumbled in. I just wanted a more clear venue for the numbers for you to see for yourselves that we are, as some of the speakers already said, far exceeding the state minimum standards. And I agree with you, Tom. I don't think we should just shoot for the minimum. Amherst is better than that. But those teachers all make the best of the time that they have. They never, not one person in that room shoots for the minimum. Never. And so we are making some valuable instructional experiences for the kids with the time that we have. And you can definitely see that we have plenty. Yeah. Moving on, I can see that there's also another artifact, some relevant language from the contract. I didn't want to copy the whole thing off. You guys don't need that. I didn't want to kill some trees just for that. Just a few pages that are relevant to this. So you can see that third artifact or fourth artifact there from the contract. But it does talk about 13.3D, subset D that you mentioned. And one thing I found very interesting in that word waive that I highlighted, just so you could find it easily, was in parentheses, as you pointed out, which kind of lowers the value of it in terms of my understanding of context or syntax. I'm not a language arts teacher, I'm a math teacher. So, maybe one of my colleagues can correct me on that, but it's more of an explanatory phrase, helping to clarify what's going on with that language. I also see too that in that language, if you turn to the next page, Article 8.3 talks about if the board chooses to pull the trigger and go to revert back to the days-based calendar, which is an option. I don't think that if the original authors of that language on the hours-based calendar had it in the intent that you had the flexibility to whether or not to waive it, they would have put that language in there. It kind of makes me wonder, why did they put that in there? It's like a lot of people interpret the Constitution, and 200 years later, you have a lot of people who weigh in on that. And this is our Constitution, the relationship between you guys and us, right? So, and unfortunately, several of the people in this room were there when the language was negotiated, and you can have some people come in from other towns and interpret it differently, but we were there. And it's not just our opinion, it's the way that the town and the boards, ever since that language was initiated, have acted that determine the intent. And I'm going to talk about intent in a little bit. So anyway, on to that last page, just again, a whole page of more clarification should you decide to go back to that days-based student year. So there's a lot of language in the contract right there. If it was that flexibility over whether or not to waive it and just kind of summarily, unilaterally take back the language, as you said, I don't see that that's really the true intent of that language.
So I may interrupt you there,
Sure.
because just to talk about this so we don't get too lost in the weeds. So this language says 175 days.
Yeah.
So now we're just assuming that we're going to go 170, or we're going to go anywhere between 170 and 175. Is this not what you just brought up there? Because the board doesn't have the privilege of waiving days because it's in this contract language. It's may waive. I mean, that couldn't be any more, to me, that couldn't be any more clear. It's the board may do this. It's not the board shall do this. It's not the board is required to do this. We have the option of waiving 5 days if we want to do that. And again, I think it's within perspective, it's within reason. So if we're doing 175 student days, if we waive snow days, then we're just letting you out of those 175 days. What about a 184-day contract that teachers sign every April? We're going to work 184 days. Are we not going to, we're going to just take 5 days off of that? I mean, it's the same principle that you brought up. You can't start so many days before Labor Day. So Ms. Eccleston couldn't start August 1st and then April 30th.
That's right.
Because that language is in the contract, and that's solidified that the school calendar shall not start X number of days before Labor Day. I have to find it in the notes. So to me, we're picking around the same issue, but this says 175 days of student instruction. Why can't we have 175 days of student instruction? We're not extending the school year. We're not making you work 180 days, 200 days. It's fulfilling 184 or 187 day contract.
Mm-hmm. And so I have two responses to that. One, we don't always waive 5 days. We waive.
We did 6 last year, I believe.
I'm sorry?
I believe we did 6 last year.
You waived 6? No, I don't believe so.
We did 5, plus we didn't go to school on the funeral day.
Yeah.
Right.
So just to be clear though, okay, let's just keep the conversation on the inclement weather days, because that's really what we're talking about. If you want to open up to, severe losses that the district have had in its personnel and some valued teachers, that's just not even germane to this conversation at this point. I don't think that's something that we need to discuss. If you want to, we can do that at another point. But my points, one that I was about to make was we haven't had 5 snow days every year consecutively. Some days we've had 2, some days we've had 3, and those are the days that the boards have waived. Second point that you talked about 175 days, the original intent of the agreement when we put that language in was that we would expand the length of our day to accommodate the time that we weren't going to be in school due to the inclement weather. So yes, technically, and I think Amy so eloquently said this a month ago, you are getting a deal if you don't have 5 snow days, because we're already banking that time. So technically, Tom, you're getting more than, if you looked at my actual chart that I put together, if you go back and look at 180 days, the way it used to be before 2012, we used to accrue 10,060 hours, or not 10,000, 1,060 hours. But look at what we're doing now. It's far over that in terms of the number that we're actually accruing. We're putting in more hours than we did before, whether it's 170 or 175. So that's why, again, Amy said you're getting a deal, because we're, in a sense, every day we work, we are adding 24, we're banking 24 minutes. And that was the intent that we had in terms of this whole idea that actually a former superintendent and a school board came up with many, many years ago. But we agreed to.
But intent is not laid out in contract language. It doesn't,
So I think that's the point. The point is that you're saying the intent is not clear. So this sentence can be read, and it has been a long time since I've taught language arts, so correct me if I'm wrong. definitely in the math field. But it says, you're looking at it as the board may waive up to 5 days. The intent when it was created, and we sat across the table, I know not from any of you, but we sat across the table, and the intent of it is the board may waive up to 5 days. So the emphasis is on, it's not whether or not they're waived. You're saying, we're saying you may waive up to 5 days. So it does make a difference how it's read. And by sitting at the table, that was the discussion we had.
So so I would, as someone who writes federal regulation for a living, the fact that it's in parens has no legal bearing. Our own advisors have said, our own lawyers that I work with daily have said, you might as well take it out of parentheses because it doesn't matter. It has the same. So it's great that there's parentheses. It doesn't matter.
And
So
we've talked to our legal as well, and they've said it's so you can contract language.
And then the language says this board has the authority to waive up to 5 days.
Did you ask your legal advisor, the definition of ambiguous language and how that's actually created?
So may isn't ambiguous. I literally do this for a living. If you have may, shall, and you can argue whether it's supposed to be must and stuff like that. And there's some nuances that they suggest may would never be interpreted by a court as shall. There's literally two different, but I don't, like literally, I'm just telling you, it says may. I also appreciate your past practice thing, but I'm not so sure that there's a lot more to that case around the timing of when that particular policy was passed than comes into a plain language reading of what this is. And 8.3, which you're right, talks about hours, is an entirely different trigger of if all of a sudden we said we were going to do 180 days, then 8.3 comes into play. And we're not.
No, we're just doing 175 educational days over the contract.
So the only
days.
As I understand this, the only question is whether the board may waive up to 5 of these days is literally that.
No, if you could turn to this precedent, and this grievance that was filed in 2016 at Prospect Mountain. Okay. Now, this is not something that I wrote. This is something that, and ironically, I like the name of the attorney that worked for the school board in Prospect Mountain. Kind of ironic because I think she's done some advising for this school district as well, but that's not really germane to this conversation. If you go to, page 19 at the top.
Yep.
I highlighted a few and I'm not going to read this whole thing because these guys will fall asleep. But absent fraud, duress, mutual mistake, or ambiguity, the search for parties' intent must be restricted to the words of the contract. So that's what you're saying. A contractual clause is ambiguous when the contracting parties reasonably differ to its meaning. And that's exactly what we have here. So, as I stated in my letter, the law is absolute. Nothing can supersede the law. When the next step down is contractual language, and that's what the CBA represents. It's contract between you and us. When there's ambiguous language within the contract, the next determinant factor is past practice. And believe it or not, all you need, the legal standard for past practice is to be in at least 2 contracts and have, I believe that's addressed as well.
At the bottom of page 19.
On page 19, for past practice and other extrinsic evidence may be examined to discern the intent of the parties where the language of a CBA is ambiguous. And I believe somewhere else in that I highlighted refers to the fact that a past practice has to be in place long enough for the employees covered under said practice can reasonably expect it to continue. And I think after 9 years and 3 contracts, that's a reasonable expectation.
Except that the language itself isn't ambiguous.
It is because you and I differ.
That's
ambiguous to you and I doesn't mean that it's ambiguous to the law.
Okay. The word, I can assure you the word may is not ambiguous.
All right.
So I think the reason why we did use counsel for this when we were talking is that when this came up before, is that we cannot say shall, because if you say you shall make up the days, it means that we have to make them up, even if there's no snow days.
Correct.
So we obviously can't say shall. So when we did this is why you see the documentation from Adam Steele talk about why we added the times to clarify this so that we weren't back at this
I'll
spot.
again point out that a superintendent doesn't negotiate or interpret contracts.
But he does make recommendations to the board, correct?
But I'm just saying, they continuing to cite what the superintendent or any superintendent has done previously relative to union contracts. Thanks.
It's a demonstration of the intent of the original.
Of the administration,
Right,
not the board.
right. And who was part of the administration, whose administration was he a part of, one of the original authors of this?
The board is distinct and separate from the administration of
This is true.
and the contract is not with the superintendent. We hire the superintendent to execute this. The board could have or should have potentially maybe said something to Mr. Steele at the time. It was not his place to answer that question.
So then,
I know in this district, there has been a lot of stuff that has been handed to the administration that is rightfully the role of the multiple boards in this district. So this is that all this discussion is rightfully advising the public and the body and the employees that this is what the contract says. This is the body that gets to make that determination, not the superintendent.
so then I think that we are here because there seems to be some feeling that they do make that decision. And
I think they have in the past. It has not come to the board. Now, as a new person here, I can tell you there's a lot of things that in my review of stuff about SAU 39 and this district, there's a lot of stuff that the administration used to do that frankly isn't their job.
Okay, so then I guess, so I'm asking, should we be concerned that we have been spoken to and we have been told we're coming for these snow days? We are going to make these snow days up. We will make sure that happens. So are you saying as a board that that is not you have not already talked about that and know that that's where you're going?
Can I talk? I would like to, thank you. So and take a pause here. I think some of this conversation is a little cart before the horse because the board needs to have the discussion and we have not. Last month's meeting was the first time we talked about this and now we're here to talk about it tonight, which is why I asked Tom what the intent was for the board to do tonight. So for me, I would like to hear whatever else the representatives from the unions have. And then I would like the board to have the opportunity to engage in some discussion because right now I feel like we're teetering in a place that's not productive or constructive for anyone. And I really want to have a fruitful conversation because I also have a lot of feelings and thoughts and opinions as well.
Sure.
So thank you.
I appreciate that. I will wrap up because you're right. We're getting into a legal discussion and perhaps your legal and our legal really should, because we wouldn't be here fighting the way that we are if we hadn't also engaged with our legal counsel. And that's the thing about language, right? I understand you have some experience. We also, Amy and I have been on contract negotiation teams for years. So we do have a little bit of experience there too. But I'm gonna finish my comments with this and then I'll allow you guys to continue your discussion. The way I see it, you guys have these options, and this is just from my perspective. One, you can push forward with this policy change and expect us to engage the grievance process, just to be clear. Okay, I think that was clear in the letter. We will charge breach of contract and unfair labor practice. We'll push it all the way to the labor board. And that's why I brought that precedent. So you can have a sense of how the labor board and their judiciary might actually rule in the favor. I estimate that you'll pay about $10,000 in legal fees. $5,000 for an arbitrator, $2,000 to $3,000 for legal support continued, not to mention all the hours that these 3 or 4 individuals are going to have to spend on this grievance. And under a default budget, I just wonder where that money would come from. Not to mention, as I said, the hours. So the next option is if days are what you want, like I said before, you have that option to pull the 180-day calendar. No fuss, no muss, no grievance. We're done. Right? No more with our concerns. It would give you the days that you wanted, but again, the trade-off is you revert back to 24 minutes, which was what we originally agreed to when this language was instituted. The next option that I feel You could initiate negotiations with us. You've already expressed an interest in negotiating with the ASSA. But for some reason you feel that the language is ironclad in your favor and you don't need to negotiate. Well, that's really unfortunate because it's not really, in my personal estimation, a really good way to develop a respectful collaborative relationship with your employees. The final option, you could drop all this and focus instead excuse me. I'm just a little, I'm hungry and it's been a long day at conferences. Sorry. Yeah. You can drop all this and focus on improving the quality of instructional time in Amherst instead of the quantity of instructional time. Continue your work on improving the rapidly aging buildings in which we work, assist the principals with their goals of improving school climate, improve student discipline and safety. All of which would drastically improve the student instructional experience for the children of Amherst, more than having them sit in 85-degree classrooms late in June, sorry.
August.
I am done, but thank you very much for taking the time to listen to us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I don't have a copy for all of you, so just bear with me because I am going to read it. So I just have a little comment as far as doing best for the students. We are all educated, and most of you have been educators. We do best for kids every single day, every day. So when that is said, it's not right, just my opinion. So our contract and the AEA contract is different as far as the snow days are concerned. So I'm going to read a letter that came from NEA in response. So I sent an email to Superintendent Barry on November 3rd, and I have not received a response other than that you did get the letter.
So can I let you know, we're planning to discuss this tonight and get back to you, but we were saving it.
Do you want me to wait then till you go there, or?
It's up to you, but we are going to discuss this. We have a non-meeting scheduled after this to discuss that impact bargaining piece. So that's why we haven't gotten back to you. We just haven't had a chance to actually have that conversation yet.
Okay.
So we're planning to do that tonight after this meeting.
Okay.
So I'll leave it
So
to you. If you'd like.
you guys just by yourselves? Is that-
Yeah, it's the board discussing because we have to discuss and then reply back to your letter there.
So I'm still going to read the letter. I'm still
That's
going to read.
perfectly fine. I just wanted you to know that we weren't ignoring it. It's just going to come up tonight.
Thank you. So it says, hello, Superintendent Barry. My name is Lori Hayes. All of you, most of you know who Lori is. I am an NEA New Hampshire UNICEF Director representing the Amherst Support Staff Association. I'm writing to you concerning the attached letter notifying myself that you want to initiate discussions regarding the board's decision to extend the school year and to make up snow days. In your letter, you state, the board understands that this requires a process to negotiate the impact of change, emphasis on the impact of change. I wondered if you could explain to me your understanding of the impact negotiations. I asked because the provision regarding snow days and our collective bargaining agreement is very clear. It says, school cancellation, delayed opening, and early dismissal. If the schools are delayed in opening and are closed due to stormy weather or some other emergency, and yet the day qualifies a legal school day, employees will be paid for the entire day. Office managers and information specialists are expected to report to work unless notified by the superintendent or designate that school has been shut down completely. Employees will be expected to work on the day canceled. It's made up. But this is where it's highlighted for us. The first 5 school days that are canceled due to snow or any other reason, the employee will be paid for the entire day based on the regular schedule hours for the employee for that day. That is very plain. If more than 5 school days are canceled as a result of snow or any other reason, the employee will not be paid for those days. However, it is the expectation of the association and the board in the most circumstances, cancellation of more than 5 school days will require those canceled days in addition 5 to rescheduled and result in the employee being paid once the rescheduled school days are worked by the employee. Do you agree that you are in fact asking the ASSA to open its collective bargaining agreement during the term of the agreement to negotiate new language or snow days? Would you agree on that?
We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about that tonight.
All right. So, thank you.
Yep.
That's it.
Okay. Anything else, Amy? Okay. Great, thank you. All right, so back to board discussion. So I think I've made my thoughts on this, Terry. I'd love to get your thoughts, and then Shannon, we can go back to you as well.
Yay, go to Terry. So I think there are two very separate issues here. I think that one of them is simply saying, is this a board responsibility to deal with these, or is it a superintendent responsibility? And I would say that it seems to me that it is clear that it is a board responsibility, and that in the past, we have ceded that responsibility to the superintendent. So I am fine saying we are willing to fulfill our own responsibilities, and it should be us, and it is us. That, I think, is one very clear, and that is not changing any precedent. That's simply saying it's our responsibility and we are taking that responsibility. Now, within that responsibility, how do I feel? I actually would agree that this happened before my time, before I was on the board, but as a citizen, it was certainly my understanding that we made the day longer to accommodate for building in 5 snow days. That's what I understood it to be. That's what I understood it to be as I joined the board. And that is what we have absolutely done as a practice. That is what parents plan around. That is what teachers plan around. That is what we say, hey, isn't it great that we're not going until the end of June, because we know that we have these built in protection against these 5 days, and then anything above and beyond, that's a different issue. Now, if we want to revisit that, I personally agree with our teachers that if we were going to change that practice, we would in good faith need to go back to the bargaining table with them if we were going to change that practice, because that has been, again, as both before I was a board member and as a board member, has absolutely been my understanding as well. So if that were to change, I don't think that we can unilaterally change that without having good faith discussions on both ends. And I would like to say that I know we're going to talk about the ASSA later, but I actually was around to fight for those and said it wasn't fair that they didn't get paid for hours that they were willing to work. And so that was something that I actually actively fought for, even though I was not on the negotiating team. That was one of the ones I asked for. And so that is something that I thought, you make your budgets and you do your things, and you deserve to have a paycheck that doesn't go up and down. And so that's something I do know something about. But this was something that happened before my time. And I think that before any substantial changes are made, I'm not saying we couldn't ever change it, but I don't think it would be fair to change it without having those discussions of good faith on both sides.
I'm so glad that you spoke before I did, Terry, because you just summarized everything that I was going to say. I lived in town for 12 years. My oldest is a freshman at Sauhegan. My understanding of the calendar has always been that we go longer than most school districts in terms of our school days, because we're building in up to 5 days that we don't have to worry about making up. So every year my kids and I do a little check mark when we get past 5. Oh no, now the school year could be longer. For that reason, I think that that's the understanding of our community. I do think, language, I think the contract to me means that we may, I get that, but that's not how it's ever happened here. So for me, I would want to see that taken up during a negotiation process, or, I pretty much everything Terry said. I don't need to reinvent the wheel. That's that.
Yeah, again, I just want to, as someone who believes boards are boards and administration's administration, I want to make it abundantly clear where those roles and responsibilities lie. The contract is between the board and the unions, and it is up to the board to execute, to instruct the administration how to execute that. They can advise us of their opinions, but it's ultimately this board. And so every March or April, that's when you're supposed to have a vote of the board for when the last day of school will be, and finalize that officially by vote of this board based on any snow days that have occurred. If that hasn't been how it is, I would think that's more out of the norm rather than the norm amongst other districts. So
where this is, irritating me is why even have a contract? If we're gonna say it's a 184-day work schedule, but maybe we'll take 5 days off. This is the board's purview to have this discussion, and I think that we need to have this discussion as we get closer to, maybe it's March 1st. By March 1st, we have this discussion. What snow days are we gonna waive, if any? Maybe that's what the new policy has to be. But to me, for the board not to consider this, we want instructional time. You gotta tell, I'm sorry.
But you keep referencing policy. The only other policy I'm aware of is the one that says this district will use hours, not days, which is, if I understand it correctly, just a board policy, correct?
Yeah, because in the contract, it says if we want to go to days, we can go to days. So
I mean, like literally tonight, just so we're clear, I could make a motion that says we should go back to days. It will fail, but nonetheless, someone on this board has the authority to do that, and we could instantly change that policy and go back to days. Is that an accurate statement?
If you did, it would also go back to the original length of day.
I understand. I get all of that that's in here. I'm just saying there's everything that's in here, and then there's what our policy has been, which is we're counting hours. So from a strategic point of view, and again, I'm new here, it would have been much better to leave everything at days, because the RSA gives the board the option to go to hours. So this district has actually painted itself into a corner by saying hours rather than just leaving it as days. And then as you get into March, say, well, it looks like we'll be close enough. It's hours. That's strategically, and I'm new here, and didn't advise anyone in negotiations or anyone in policy, but that's really what it should have been from day one, because then you have the opportunity to pivot. You can't now. You own it until you redo the whole thing, frankly. So I mean, there's nothing in here that makes me absolutely convinced this board has not only the authority, the expectation, and there's no question. You're not changing language. You're not changing any of that. All you're changing is who makes that call, and it's not the superintendent. That doesn't mean this board won't waive them. Right? And so until there's a decision to not waive them, there is no change in past practice. It's just who. And then it's not the administration, and it's this body. So there's other discussions to have on this, and I think one of them is around the fact that you have it, or we have it listed as days versus hours, but that's a bigger discussion.
So my point to this is, these contracts are for a certain number of days. We're just automatically fine, just potentially wiping 5 of those days off. Our school year is not that much longer hours wise. When we go to the hours base, we're not that much more than some of these other school districts.
Agreed.
You want to look at Amherst Middle School, we have no passing time in classes. So we have roughly 990, 1,000 hours, whatever it might be. Where we drop below that if you want to start building in passing time. So we're not counting a 45-minute class where the first 2 minutes are kids moving over, going to the locker. So how much of this actual instructional time is, to Grant's point, is quality instructional time when it's a 45-minute class? How much of that is 45 minutes? We have high outcomes for 80% math and reading literacy. How can extra learning time, how can fulfilling a contract not help us meet those obligations? We have 1 grade in elementary school that's at 80% proficiency, and that's 4th grade in math. In a district that has these resources, that just approved a contract that's upwards of $2.5 million over the next 3 years, to just continue to neglect this and to ignore it, to me, that we have an obligation to students and to the contract. We have an obligation to taxpayers too. And just by waiving extra days and just letting contracts go short and, ending before everybody, starting the same time, having a marginally longer day, having middle schoolers that have a 25-minute study hall at the end of the day, that's not quality. It's what I need, but how many kids are taking advantage of what I need? Some are just doing homework, so I don't have to do it at home. I never see my kids' homework because she has nothing else to do in that final 25 minutes. So this is where the quality instruction time and whatever we can pull back and whatever we have the authority to pull back and discuss, to me, it's negligent to taxpayers and to students if we're not going to do that. So I don't think there's an action we need to take tonight. I think that by March 1st, I think we need to have another conversation on this and maybe have this debate in that March meeting to say what snow days are we going to waive at this point. And that's the way that I think we should go with this. I don't think, again, there's any action tonight, but if the board is good with that, let's just postpone this until March 1st and then have that conversation and make that our new practice, that every March 1st, we're going to have the conversation of what days we will or won't waive.
Go ahead.
I'm okay with having the conversation in March so long as we don't have it unilaterally without our teachers as part of the conversation. I feel like unless and until the language of the contract itself changes.
The language is the language, though, Terry. The intent is not in a contract. Anybody can assume intent. Anybody can say, well, I kind of viewed it this way.
Well, but I don't think this.
But that's true.
I think this is a universal. If you walked up to.
It's not universal. I've been in this town for 6 years. It's not universal to me. The board may waive up to 5 snow days. There's nothing ambiguous about that to me. It's not saying the board will waive snow days up to 5. It's the board may waive snow days. Language is language. Language matters.
I think the up to 5 matters because it's nothing beyond 5. We've only built in enough to cover 5. So I do think that the one absolutely informs the other, right? Why is 5 even the number there if there wasn't something to help take care of that, right? And so I absolutely think it was intended, and that was very intentional that it's 5. It wasn't a random number plucked out of nowhere. It wasn't like, it seems good. That's a week. It was something that was intentional. And so if you're going to change that intent, and I'm not saying that it couldn't be, but if you're going to change that intent, it does not fair in my mind to do that unilaterally. It would have to be something that was collaborative and was agreed upon. And if we had a very specific purpose for saying, I personally kind of agree that, okay, fine, you end on a Friday instead of a Wednesday, that might make sense. And that's something that could be discussed, but it's not something that I would feel comfortable going, well, that's what we're going to do. And you guys just lump it. No, I mean, everybody's already made their plans otherwise.
Yep.
And so if we want to change it, we can change it, but we should change it when we are looking at the contract and not as it currently is, because I do think the way that it currently is, there is absolutely an intent, and there's both practice and intent. And you can't tell me that's random. It's not random in there that it's up to 5.
Shannon.
Yeah, I mean, again, I agree with much of what Terry said. I think a lot of the things that you just shared, Tom, touch on a lot of things that have nothing to do with snow days and making them up. How we're using the day and the passing period, like.
But it all factors into the fact that we have, in the end, the same amount of instructional hours with considerably less days. And if we're going to waive snow days, again, we don't have to go on, Shannon. Sorry.
No, but we don't. We have more hours. We have the hours. So it's how we use them. And it's a different conversation that I think is very worthy. And I want it to be very clear that I'm not interested in being negligent as a board member. I'm not interested in not fulfilling the terms of the contract. What I'm telling you, and Tim, I know that you just arrived from Conval, but the practice in this district has been, and it has been, I don't know many times that have read the contract. And if they had, maybe they would feel the same way that you do about waive the 5. You talk to most moms on the Amherst Moms Facebook page, and the thread is always out there. Oh, well, are we past 5 yet? Like that would be my concern. I'm not saying that I'm opposed to this conversation at all. I think that this board cares very much, our superintendent and the team here care very much about quality instructional time. I think the teachers in the room care very much about quality instructional time. So I think that this is a worthy conversation to have. For me, I don't know that going, doing something different than what we've done is going to get us the quality. And there's a whole host of now challenges that are coming from that, intentions that are coming from that. So I would like to see this discussion happen collaboratively if it's going to happen. And that's where I'm at right now.
Okay.
So I don't mind talking about it again in March, but I don't know that I'm going to change the way I feel.
So we'll table this for now. We'll have to continue this conversation. I think, we can continue to have these discussions and eventually get to March 1st and determine how and how we're going to implement this. Clearly, there's not consensus tonight on what we want to do. So we will continue to have this conversation. It may be something we have to do in a non-meeting to discuss more of a strategy in terms of how we want to approach this. So to cover Terry and Shannon's points as well. But with that, we'll move on to our next agenda item tonight. I will bring in, actually, I'll let you do the introductions, Shannon. We'll talk facilities here. Our facilities focus tonight is going to be on the projects we have on the docket at Amherst Middle School, particularly when it comes to the roof project. This is part of our subcommittee updates. So Shannon, I will let you take over. We have a guest here tonight from EEI to go over these estimates.
Can we get like a 2-minute recess so we can set up the presentation and and let
A
everybody
2-minute recess
that wanna
at
stay?
6:30.
Great. Thank you.
Okay, so let's jump into it. We'll just go to the next one. So some of this information you've already had, but for new listeners, all of the commercial HVAC equipment lasts about 30 years. All of the equipment, with the exception of the boilers and some of the recent new addition units, are 30+ years old. So that means almost all your infrastructure is at end of useful life. The windows are unique in this building in that your current HVAC system is built right into the window, and those windows are caulked with asbestos. So it's hard to say, how do you start and stop an HVAC project versus a window versus a roof? And so the way the facilities team decided to tackle it is with a section of a building and go, when you do the roof, you do the HVAC, ideally, if approved by this board, you do the ductwork, you do the windows in that section, remove the asbestos in the windows, and now whatever that chunk of the building is complete. We were able to do the smallest chunk last summer, which was what we called roof H, which was essentially over the stage area. The next slide. Here's just a picture of that, where you see below is your HVAC, which is built right into the windows, and then that's caulked around with asbestos material. And it's also very difficult to service these units, especially the ones on the second floor. You have to get a lift outside just to get at the units. Next slide. That's what the inside looks like. And it's what's interesting about these units, they're also sort of serve as cabinet space. As you can see, there's a bunch of storage on top of it. So when we take this old 1970s HVAC unit out, we're proposing to put some millwork or cabinets back in its place so that you actually gain useful space in the classroom. Next slide. This is in the shop area where the units are actually at 6'6" and they're very loud in the space. That's not part of this phase, but it's just another type of unit you have at the school. Next slide. Next slide. What we're proposing would be roof mounted dehumidification units, which would have energy recovery and be 100% outdoor air. So outdoor air would come in, be heated with the exhaust air that's leaving, and we would actually have the ability to dehumidify the space. So right now, most of the classrooms, if it's 100 degrees, have no ability to bring down the temperature. The units we're proposing wouldn't be full on air conditioning, but it would be the ability to better control the temperature on those hot days. It'll lower the noise in the classroom and provide better control for each thermostat. Next slide. We did 2 phases of design. The first phase tackled the areas under roof C1, C2, D, H, K, and A2. Those were identified as the worst roofs and the oldest HVAC equipment. And so we started there, and we priced out doing a comprehensive project. That phase came in somewhere around $7 million all in. We were able to chip away at that with roof H. It doesn't address the areas that are all in white, which would be a future phase. Next slide. This is a little bit hard to read on here, but I think this is the same information as on this screen. So we have 2 scenarios for the group. The first scenario, which totals 1 million, and it's in the set of numbers on the left-hand side of the page. It was 1,885,000 would be the number I would recommend that if you were to put this section in the budget or in a warrant article, you would use because those were sort of the average of the bids that we got in when we went out to bid. If we were able to use the low bidders and got approval essentially in December ahead of when most of the other schools are doing projects and going out to bid, we could lock in all the low bidders in 2023 for this 2024 work. That would save, that would bring the total to the sum of the next column, which is 1,623,000. Then I think there was one slight difference, which is reflected in the far number to the right, which is if we add a cover board, which is a protective board above the below the roof layer to provide some additional life to the insulation below it, that would add 30,000, and that would bring it up to 1,653,000. So there was some back and forth about whether or not to do that, and that's why we have three totals, one with the cover board. So the first total, again, 1,885,000. It's all of the HVAC associated with the C1 roof area. It's replacing that roof, replacing the windows in the C1 area. And that would be the number that we would recommend carrying forward if you were to put this in a bond or in a warrant or in a budget. If you could approve it now using your trust fund, we think between 1,623,000 or 1,653,000. I think the facilities committee and Roger were leaning toward doing it with the cover board, which would bring it to 1,653,000. I will say we went through these lines line by line with Roger and with the superintendent and at the facility. We're happy to do it now, but I think the aggregate has been gone through at the committee level. And then the next slide. So
why don't we pause right there, if you don't mind, before we move forward? And if you're comfortable, open it up to if anybody has any questions on the cost. I think Mike did a great job of kind of summarizing the work on the committee level. So we did look at this at our last meeting, line by line. The recommendation from the committee does include the cover board. Roger felt that was very useful and appropriate. So what we were interested in is what you see on that far column to the right, and Tom was in attendance at that meeting as well. So if you have anything to share from that, but I guess if anyone has any questions for Mike related to this pricing, now would be a great time for that.
So the other thing I see on here, Mike, is and maybe I'm missing something, but I think the numbers under the alternates, you're under the first option and then the middle option on this sheet. I don't believe the numbers add up. So if you look at the top part, the main difference in items 1 through 14 on either sheet is 140,000 for mechanical install. It's 26,000 for electrical install. So you get your numbers down below. The total is 1.565, 1.399. You go to the next one though, all those items are the same. The alternates are the same pricing, and yet it's a difference of 80,000.
I can answer that. So on the first option, we selected the specified window type, which is 17C.
Okay.
After meeting with Roger and the architect, there was sometimes called a value engineering or an alternate window type, which was cheaper but still met the general of the design, which is 17B. And so 17B
takes the place of 17C. Got it. Thank you. I missed that. I apologize. Thank you. Oh, okay, because it's the same. I got it. All right, there we go. Thank you. That makes sense.
So it's a small change, but why in two of them is it saying everything's going in the gym, and then in the far column they're all going in containers and it's cost like 5,000 more?
Okay, so good question. Originally, we wanted to essentially use the gym as this we're going to take all the ceilings down in these classrooms, and we have to bring all the classroom furniture somewhere. Originally, we were going to just, in my idea, we were just going to put it in the gym. Roger was concerned that they wouldn't have time to clean all the floors and also wouldn't have time for his staff to move anything around. So he asked EEI and our labor to move everything out to trailers and move it back in to allow his staff to focus on cleaning the floor. If we put all the items in the gym or the CAF, he won't be able to wax and clean that floor. So that was the main reason why we added the trail, where we brought the stuff to the trailers.
The concern is to be ready for day
Get ready
one
for the
start date.
And that's fine, and that
Yeah.
makes sense to me. I think that, for some of the other numbers where they're slightly different between. Explain to me again why they changed.
Yeah, so the specified window, which does have a slightly higher, what in the window world they call U value. The rest of us talk about R value or insulation level. The specified window is a slightly better thermal performance than the sort of savings window, to the point of about 100,000 in potential savings. And so we met with the architect, met with Roger, and thought that the added bang for the buck for that extra 100,000 for that slightly more minimal, better formal performance, we decided to take that savings and save approximately 100,000 on window costs.
I mean, is it going to give us 100,000 in heat savings over the lifetime of the windows?
No, not even close.
Yeah. So it's like we're going to save $100,000 worth of burning fuel, or
Yeah.
It's like why it's not worth it to upgrade the windows in my house.
Yes, it's the same exact reason.
So like mechanical equipment install.
those are because it's cheaper contractors. That's why if we vote on this now, Terry, we can get those middle prices. We can go with the low price contractors because we can book them now. We can approve this now. We can book them now. We can secure the lower price contractors. They're smaller, so they book up earlier. But if we book them now, we're going to save 150,000 as opposed to doing it in March when everybody else is going to be trying doing the same thing we are.
No, but. In the far right.
Right. No, go ahead. I know exactly where you're going.
Yeah, it's, some of these are more for some things rather than in the middle.
Mechanical install goes from 451 to 312, and then on the right is 409. So it's not the 312 or the 450.
So that what they started doing is consolidating some lines.
Gotcha.
I agree.
Yeah, it's 4A and 4B in the
Yeah.
middle, and then we move to
Yeah.
4. It's just 4A and 4B.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Really, we're hoping for the apples to apples.
Well, that's okay. As long as I understand what's
Yeah.
happening, I'm just trying to make sure I follow the bouncing ball. That's
Same.
all.
I had the same question, Jackie. Thanks.
Yeah. No, that's good.
Oh, that's why.
Yep.
Right column being
The one to approve.
that it would still be earlier and it would be kind of the best of both worlds.
Correct.
Price wise, and so that's really what we're looking at.
Yep.
If we approve early, do we have enough in the budget?
Yeah.
We do.
Amy, oh, is your mic on, Terry?
Wait, no, that's-
So Terry just asked if we have enough in the fund. We do.
Yep.
And I don't know if Amy has anything to add to that other than yes. And you talk about what we're going to maintain in the fund too. We've also discussed, we don't want to drain the fund completely. Roger has a number that we have been working at in this fund to maintain in that fund for some sort of catastrophic event, right? We don't want to just empty it out. Yep.
Yeah, so we want to maintain $100,000 per building, so that would be $300,000 for the 3 school buildings. And actually, we went over the other day when the funds would be drawn out. So we do have the funds, even if the warrant article isn't approved, but it's likely that we'll be requesting a portion of funds from FY24 and then a larger portion from FY25. So I think we talked, it was either
But we have enough if
20%.
we have enough if
We
it
do.
fails, and that's the capital reserve funding in March. If that
Yep.
fails, we still have enough in there now with the $300,000 cushion.
Yeah, and we're also earning significant interest. So with having that large amount of money in there. So
Okay, so we can't afford it.
Yep.
We would save money and we would be able to get a jump start on making sure we can get it done this summer. So that by the time school year starts next year, just like we were able to get work done this summer, we could have another big chunk of our most problematic things, including HVAC, which we know is a big ticket item that is woefully failing.
Correct. Yeah, Mike, or Steve, would you mind to go back just to the roof diagram again real quick? So what we're talking about again is C1, which is this right here. So that's part of the original construction of the building. If you're in AMS and you're familiar with that 5th grade wing where the triangle classrooms are, it's that. And that has historically been a very problematic, barrels out catching. I think a ceiling tile has come down because of, so it would make, it would be nice momentum to gain for the building.
Just that section though.
It's just the C1 section, right? So that will lead us into the next couple slides that Mike has. But what we're talking about tonight for the capital reserve funding and for the public hearing next month would be to authorize the expenditure funds to do that section. We still have work ahead of us as a board to fund the rest of this project, and those will be additional conversations. But I did ask Mike to prepare a little bit to tee us up so that we can continue to have those conversations.
That's not intended for tonight. That
He's just gonna,
over.
I mean, it's up to you.
Having approved.
Nothing we're spending tonight. Tonight, we're solely talking about this section.
My desire is if we're gonna put something on the ballot, I prefer to have all 5 of us here. So I think this is a little bit different. It's capital money. So I don't know if we have to get into an in-depth conversation. I'd love to have a preview for Mike on it, what your recommendations are, but I think it's a low conversation.
I mean, if you want to put a pin in it, Tom, that's fine too, but
Totally fine.
we're ready to me, I think it's important that as we talk about what we're doing this summer, we also have kind of start laying the foundation as a board and with the community that we're also forward thinking to how we're going to move these other phases forward. I know at the committee level, we talk a lot about that. We've spent a lot of time with administration and Roger and EEI kind of thinking through that. So just to kind of give everyone here a preview of where we are with those future phases.
Well, I think if you're going to eat an elephant, you gotta start somewhere,
We
right?
gotta start somewhere and we did start with H, but this is the real, and H was great, but it was a section behind the stage. So you're not seeing a lot of impact, to student experience with that right now. This is going to be just like game changer for the classes, the students and staff that are in that's in that section of the building.
No, absolutely.
Yeah.
One more slide. Okay, so that, one more slide, sorry. So this, I have 2 slides here. By the way, I have a whole spreadsheet that we've gone through at the committee level that this just consolidates. Oh, thank you for giving it a little bit.
I'll try and nail it.
So of all the remaining areas, roof, HVAC, windows, asbestos abatement, we came up, I'm sorry. Sorry. Of all the remaining areas, we came up with roughly 14 million in future projects that within the next decade need to be dealt with at this building. The areas, the dark areas of the roof are what I would call the next phase or part of phase 1. We're sort of doing, C1 is also part of that, but that price, that's somewhere in the 6.8 million to do HVAC, roofing, windows for that. And then the areas of the school where the roof has a little bit more life, has newer roofs, is another 7.1 million. And so the question is, okay, these are big numbers. How do you do it? So there's really 2 to 3 ways that districts are dealing with this. One is, okay, if we think this has to be done in the next 10 to 15 years, which yes, it's 15 million, $1 million a year. You'd get it done in 14 years in the budget. I know that's a big number. What's more common though, and so in Keene, we mentioned this at the facility committee, they put 1.7 million in the budget every year, and we just chip away at wings of the school just like this. The benefit of that, Keene's not paying any interest on it, so they just put, and every year we just keep chipping away. Then they roll in their fund balance, and that's how they do it. What's more common is to roll a package together into a 15 or 20-year lease. And so what this next phase, if you rolled it into a 15-year lease at the current rates, which are about 5 to 5.5, would be annual payments of 650,000 for a 15-year lease, or 543,000 for a 20-year lease. And that's basically the most common path forward with how to get all of this done. And then the phase that would have to come after that would be the other sections of the building, which right now have some life left on them. But in the next 5 to 10 years, those areas have to be dealt with as well. So either continuing to chip away over the year or doing a lease or bond is the most common ways to deal with this.
Yeah, and those other sections that Mike's referring to, those are the sections in white that you don't see a letter. And you'll notice that one of those sections would be the annex. So the newest portion of AMS, that roof still has a little bit of serviceable life in it. And I think that's the gym, the section over the gym. So both of those are future sort of phasing.
I will say in New Hampshire, I know it's hard to get things passed. I have seen doing a package like this, roofing, lighting, HVAC, windows, bundled as a lease, either in the budget or as a warrant, have passed in very conservative communities. Like we did a project like this in Jaffrey Ridge, which is and also in Timberlane, we had a huge $25 million one pass. And so that seems to be the way most districts are tackling these types of issues with leases.
Excuse me, Mike, any further questions for Mike? Okay. I appreciate the feedback on that, Mike. So I think at this point now, if we want to take a motion to, so what would our motion be? Because we need to host if we want to approve this, we have to host a public hearing to be able to take the funds out of the CRF. So I guess our motion tonight is to host a public hearing December 5th.
December
19th.
The 5th is the date, right?
Okay.
That's right.
Even though the 5th is facilities, it's not.
Yep, that's perfectly fine. So I think,
Published in the newspaper in time.
okay,
Yeah,
perfect.
Sure.
we try.
Sure.
19th is
I will make
December.
So I'll make the motion to hold a public hearing to expend capital reserve funds at our regularly scheduled December 19th meeting and direct the superintendent's office to make the appropriate postings.
Perfect. I have a second.
Second, that motion?
Second from Terry. Any further discussion on this? Great, all in favor? Call the vote, 1, 2, 3, 4, and nobody opposed, 1 absent. So I appreciate the support, Mike. Thank you for the information and thank you for the work done on this. And hopefully December 19th at about 8 o'clock, we'll have good news, maybe 7:30 if we're productive that night.
Thank you for your.
Thank you, all the work done by the facilities.
Yeah, and Shannon, you're the one that's been doing the legwork for this, not just this year on the board, but prior to this as well. So thank you.
Yeah, no, like I said, this is a really exciting night, to kind of see the fruits of the labor and to really think back about where this started and that the money's there and like the community supported the reserve fund is great. I provided the board and it's in the packet for anyone watching at home.
Thank you, Mike.
A summary of the work of the committee for this fiscal year. It is a working document. We will continue to update that before our December 5th meeting. What I would ask each of you to do would be to really spend some time in that document as it relates to the Wilkins project. As you recall, we determined in our summer facilities retreat that we were directing Banwell, the SAU, and the Building and Grounds Committee to explore 2 fully costed options for grade 1 to 5. So you'll see the floor plans that are being costed out. They are currently in the possession, the full scope narrative. If you click on that scope narrative hyperlink, it talks about everything, the mechanical, electrical that would be required in a reno, the new design, the square footage, a lot of work. The Building and Grounds Committee met multiple times from September to just last week, going through that program. Dr. Murphy, Mr. Chamberlain, Roger, everyone was very involved in reviewing multiple iterations of the floor plans that BAML presented us before we handed those over for a cost analysis from DEW. So at our December 5th meeting, we will have representatives from DEW Construction, Banwell Architects. I believe Ty and Bond is also going to join us. They are the civil engineering firm who has done the site work there at Wilkins. And at that meeting, we should be prepared to discuss those costs in depth. And then at that time, we really need to be prepared to have the discussion how we're going to move forward if we feel like we're ready to make a march to the ballot in March, or kind of what we think we're ready to do with this work. So it's really good work. I wanted to note that what we're looking at has removed 2 grades and refined the scope of the program to really balance and reflect the feedback from the community with the needs of the school. The Reno edition floor plan that you have is 111,889 square feet. The new construction is 119,248 square feet. I'm starting to get tired. So, you know, we have really worked hard there. So I'm not going to go through all of that tonight, but if everyone could just spend some time with that before December 5th, and anyone in the community who's interested, that work is included in our packet. So unless anyone has any questions for me, that's my building and grounds update. Thank you.
Thank you. Terry, I'll ask you if you have any wellness committee updates.
What do we have a wellness committee?
If you don't have any, that's fine. It was just it was a note in there, and I wanted to make sure that we address that.
Wellness committee has actually been active. There is going to be, Steve, what's the update on the survey that we were going to do?
Somebody forgot. I started it like 2 weeks ago, but I forgot. So we didn't get that out, but we'll get a survey out to the community and to the teachers.
What is the survey for?
A survey is to assess the wellness interests of the community and staff that we thought maybe as they came in, write the QR code, but somebody forgot present company in a blue shirt, maybe.
That's okay. So really what we're looking to do is to engage at a community level. So, and by community, we mean families and people who don't have kids in school, and our staff, and really our entire learning community and beyond. We're looking to share different things, including like financial wellness. And we're looking at healthy eating and movement, and making sure that you have all sorts of things like a balance in your life, right? And so because we're looking at a pretty broad area of topics that could possibly be approached, we want to say, where are people most interested in, so that we can focus our efforts. And then we could provide, do you want to have 1 or 2 big days, or do you want to have smaller events that you can just go to the ones that are of interest to you, and, you know, and just get a feel for where people are at, and then look at where we can support them and use our partnerships with internal resources and Health Trust and some other places that we have access to, and try to tailor from there. So we are looking to have a more holistic approach and more hands-on approach than maybe in the past. And so really we felt like that was the next logical step, was to gauge interest.
Okay.
The only other big thing I think the board might be interested in, Mike and I and Amina took a pretty deep dive into our insurance health trust and insurance rates. It was about $8 million in claims, $1 million in prescription drugs, which was a significant. They were pretty normal, regular claims until the fourth quarter of last year, and that's when they bumped. Also a deep dive in. There's a cost saving and an efficiency work called Smart Shopper. Smart Shopper is your ability to shop and find the least expensive vendor. It's something that I've practiced with my family because I'm a health trust person for years. There was about $800,000 left on the table by not utilizing the Smart Shop approach. Amina is already booked education times for the staff. She's going to staff meetings and talk about Smart Shopper. It really is an efficiency piece that, you know, if we work together, we can reduce our costs together. And so it's about 87% of our cost is claims. There are our pooling fees, and then there, of course, there are administrative fees. We are required to bid in Amherst before we negotiate. So 2 years before we negotiated the previous contract, Amina does a bid for healthcare, looking for other options. There's only 3 or 4 options for public service. And one of the options only does high deductible, and we have a non-high deductible option. And so that we could not use that vendor. But we are digging in and trying to make as much efficiency as possible, and Amina is into it. She's the Director of Human Resources, for those who didn't.
Thank you. Any other subcommittee reports?
So technically not.
Yeah, I was.
You go first.
Our last policy committee meeting, we were not able to hold because we did not have full representation from every board. However, the NHSBA the NHSBA has moved to a new policy database platform, which is powered by Simbly. So I just wanted to throw this out there. The platform is much more dynamic than what was previously offered and allows for easy navigation, provides links to statutes and laws that govern policy recommendations. If you want to geek out over that thing, it was really exciting. Additionally, though, I want to put a plug in for Simbly because it's also, if we ever adopted our policies, we could cross-reference recommended policies with adopted and vice versa if we were also on Simbly. And Simbly is a platform that provides a plethora of board management tools. So just kind of something to be aware of. It was really exciting that NHSBA had done all that work. And Christine, anyone who had questions on how to log in was able to show us that login. But in terms of work, we weren't able to do any work.
Thank you.
So I'll just, sorry, before this is the second policy committee meeting in my short time here that we haven't been able to have a full meeting because of what appears to be a handshake agreement that board or that group won't act or won't meet or can't meet if somebody from each of the boards isn't there. So I was frustrating that we had the 5-person board had 2 people and a 7-person board couldn't send anyone. So I don't know why that agreement is the case. If it's a 5-person committee and there's 3 people on it, and that other board had the opportunity to send someone in their place and didn't, it's just it then delays. So now we're out another month on any work that committee would have done.
So I think what we need to do is bring this up with Christy Peters, the chair of the SAU board, because if this is prohibiting us from getting things done in a timely fashion, if it's wasting other board members' times.
Yeah, so
I know as I say it, Shannon, is because you're not actually approving anything at those meetings. You're just recommending the boards to review it, and other boards will get a chance to review and make their recommendations at that point. So I don't know if this needs to be a stopper from even sending it to the boards if we can't get full attendance on that. And I understand life happens. I'm not being critical of any board people that can't make it. It's more of this, let's think, is this a wise policy when the boards have to review and make edits to it anyway? So
that's exactly it. Thanks.
Go ahead, Shannon. Sorry.
Oh, no, that's okay. I don't know that it's, yeah. Okay.
All right.
And then I just had an update from, I'm the liaison to the PTA, so I have a quick update on the work that they're doing, which is always ongoing and always great for our schools. So I did share some totals from the Boosterthon fundraiser last month, but the almost final totals are in. And at Clark Wilkins, they raised $62,748, and they're still waiting on corporate matches of about $6,000 that aren't included in that total. So, I mean, our community there has really rallied, and I know that the staff and the leadership in that building and all the members of the PTA worked really hard. So that's incredible and a real testament to the support that we have there. And then at Amherst Middle School, also incredible, is $27,169, still waiting on corporate matches of about $2,000. And that's a phenomenal total. There were years where they weren't really doing much fundraising at all in that building. So really exciting stuff. The week of December 1st through the 3rd December 1st is the 3rd grade circus residency performance. This started, I don't know, maybe about 7 or 8 years ago. The PTA funds this for our 3rd graders every year. It's a week-long residency with Troy Wonderly. It's amazing. If you haven't been to one, come check it out on December 1st. And then December 14th will be the annual holiday story time for the Clark Wilkins school building. We'll have some teachers, the music teacher there reading stories, and the PTA provides support for that through volunteers and and everything. So that's great. And that's my PTA update.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Thank you, Shannon. All right, next item on the agenda is, oh, sorry, Teddy.
This morning.
Okay.
Sorry, it's been an active month. Our select board this morning, it was a small but mighty half of the board that met. They're in really good shape. School psychologists are something that we are very lucky to have fully staffed here in Amherst, but it's something that a lot of districts are struggling with finding. Milford's had 3 open positions for more than a year. And so something that they have done is that they have expanded the number of psychologists that they employ through RSEC, and then they contract them out to districts, and they're actually making money on that and helping to provide a much needed thing to many of the districts that they serve. And so that was a pretty exciting thing. They are looking at expanding one of their schools and adding a middle school program in Longview, the school that's up in Deerfield. And so that is something that has been a really big demand, is having alternative pathways for that age group. And so that is something that they're looking to add in the next school year. And they also, we have asked them at Sunrise Center to have member districts. We already get a discount when we have to send students to their program, but we would like to offer to our staff having priority for their children at Sunrise. So if they have dependents that would go there, they wouldn't get a discount, but we've asked if they would, like if there's a wait list, if they would put them at the top of the wait list to help our staff be able to find good quality childcare here close to school. And so they're going to be discussing that and coming back with a proposal. And we hope that that is a benefit that we can provide our staff. And so that's something we'd like to push forward with. And we also had added a curriculum director as a trial thing the past 2 years. And today we voted to keep that as something that is a permanent part of their structure, because it's really been great. And I think that it has taken some of the burden off of having to come to our member districts and get a lot of curriculum help. And so while they still look to us for some guidance, it has really helped to have a full-time person doing that. And they've seen a lot of benefits from it. And so I thought that was exciting that Amanda's made a huge difference in that role. And so, yeah, we had a really good active, and they're a little bit low on enrollments in a couple of their places, and they're looking very hard to staff out Sunrise. It's actually difficult to get teachers in that age group, but they're working on it. And so they're doing really well overall as an organization, and it's a really great partnership that we have with them.
Great. Anybody else? Okay, now we'll move on to the budget. I will let Ms. Stacy have her moment to shine.
Share the screen.
Thanks, Jen. Thank you. All right. Yeah, this budget, always a good time. You can, yeah, go ahead. Okay, so this is draft 2, as you know. So this shows the just a summary of the changes. So the largest change from draft 1 to draft 2 is a reduction in retirement payouts. Notice deadline for AEA retirement is 11/1, and we received 2 notices, so we were able to reduce these lines as we initially budgeted for the maximum number of eligible retirees according to the collective bargaining agreement. The SEU assessment is now known, and there is a reduction from the prior year, driven by a reduction in the SAU budget to be apportioned to the school districts. Regular transportation was adjusted slightly to align with recent average daily membership and attendance numbers, and there were some salary and benefit adjustments. So an overall decrease. Go to the next slide. So the draft 2 budget is a 4.2% increase over the FY24 adopted budget, but it is down 0.5% from draft 1. So the only change noted here in the budget assumptions is a slight change in health insurance
guaranteed maximum rate from 21.9% to 21.8%. I did do a calculation to see what the amount of health insurance line would be had we had a more typical 4% increase. And the budget would have been $780,000 less. So I thought that was an important number for the board to be aware of. Yep. So this provides a comparison by fund. So the budget is made up of 3 funds: the general fund, food service, and grants. Food service and grant expenditures are offset by revenue. So when you account for the offsetting revenue, this budget is actually only increasing by 3.7%. While the goal is to have food service fully offset by revenue, sometimes there's a shortfall that needs to be offset from the general fund. However, we're fortunate in the Amherst School District to have built up a significant surplus of approximately $160,000 that can be used if revenue does not meet the demand of the projected expenditures, which means we can be confident that the revenue will indeed offset the expenditures in this fund. All right, so these amounts have been updated for draft 2. To summarize, curriculum admin Clark Wilkins admin and curriculum, wages, and the increase in health and dental benefits, and the additional administrative support at the building level are included in this increase. Facilities is also greatly impacted by the increase in health and dental. There is an increase in preventive maintenance contracts, utilities, replacement equipment, security, grounds upkeep, software, property and liability insurance, as we need to ensure that our buildings are maintained as best as possible. Student services is primarily due to special ed transportation, but also partially offset by the reduction in out-of-district tuition and related services, and in special education paraprofessionals. Technology is primarily up for student and staff laptops, network costs, and equipment. Food service, this is up primarily due to the food service, to the food costs increases and health and dental rates for non-union staff. And as a reminder, these are offset by revenue. Capital miscellaneous, this includes primarily non-union wage and related benefit increases, printing, Medicaid billing, and other expenses that are, as a reminder, based on FY22 amounts. This is partially offset by the reduction in the SAU assessment. Regular ed transportation, this reflects the rate increases for regular ed transportation from FY22. In addition, we're proposing 16 bus routes for next year, as opposed to the current 15 routes, to help address the timeliness issues that we've been experiencing. And grants are projected to increase, but as discussed, these are fully offset by revenue. We're good. Default calculation. All right, so this shows the total change between the FY24 operating budget and the FY25 default calculation. The current year appropriation was reduced by the capital reserve warrant article. We added in contractually obligated salaries and benefits, included food service and grants, as they're offset by revenue and do not affect the tax rate. Adjusted for decreases in other required costs, because the default can be an increase or a decrease. And this included a decrease in debt service interest, the SEU assessment, and student services, non-salary and benefits. So the total change between the FY24 budget and the FY25 default is $409,528. All right, so now we'll look at the difference between the FY25 default calculation and the FY25 proposed budget. So these are items that are not included in the default and are therefore at risk if the budget does not pass. So included in AMS admin and curriculum is the new special ed administrator. Prior year, or not included in the budget, but included in this delta. Prior year wage increases, health and dental increases for non-union employees,
retirement payouts, increased costs for substitutes, and co-curricular stipends. For facilities staff are not part of the AEA, and non-union prior year wage increases and health and dental increases are not included in the default. Preventive maintenance contract increases, replacement equipment, security, grounds, software increases, property and liability, those are not included as well. Technology, same issue with the non-union wage increases and the health and dental increases, as well as replacement devices, equipment, and supplies. For Clark Wilkins admin and curriculum, a portion of the early ed director position dedicated to regular education is not included in the default. Non-union health and dental increases, prior non-union wage increases, printing costs increases from FY22, and added stipends for co-curricular activities are not included. For capital and miscellaneous, this is primarily the non-union wage increases and increases in other district-wide administrative costs. Transportation, this is the rate increase for regular ed transportation from FY22. This increase is not included in the default, but will need to be funded regardless of the budget passing. Food service is the non-union health and dental and prior wage increases for managers. So the total difference between the FY25 default and the proposed is $970,896 or 2.9%. Keep going. So just a brief review. We did talk about these at as part of draft one. However, there is a new fund that is being proposed, a vehicle fund. And this is to be funded at $40,000 and come from the unassigned fund balance. Steve, do you want to add a little context to this? I know you worked on this heavily with Roger.
Yeah. So what we have a fleet and the fleet. So there's 4 vehicles and a tractor that is end of life that we're being replaced with a Gator. And we have we're looking at a truck sander, right? A truck that plows and sands. And then we have, as we've started in the last couple of years, trades. And we have HVAC trade and we have an electrician trade. So those would be on planned replacement would be small transit vans, no seats, of course, just with like shelves inside. So this $40,000 a year for the next few years would support the replacement of those vehicles with specific. Right now, we are on last life of hand-me-down vehicles that met the need, but they're near end of life. And after this, we'll also talk about the possibility of purchasing a van for extracurricular activities, which would be support with this kind of $40,000. After we replace the initial 4, we'll lower the value because we'll get 10 years out of this. One of the things is that the trades vehicles are planned. Selwyn doesn't know this yet, but they'll know this soon. There'll be a plan to share the cost because the trades work all districts actually, and we build. So there's some thoughts about sharing the cost. There are Selwyn is also starting a vehicle trust, so we'll work together on planned replacement of all these vehicles. Cool beans.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, that's all right.
All right. So there's nothing else new on this slide. All right. So this is a new slide. This shows the staffing changes that are reflected in this budget. I'm going to talk a little bit about the specifics on this slide, and then I'm going to turn it over to Mike to add some additional context to these changes. So there were some intentional staffing changes to the FY25 budget that were made in an effort to best suit the needs of students while looking to be as fiscally responsible as possible. So the staffing additions to the budget include the special ed coordinator at Amherst Middle School, and this is salary and benefits for $155,446. The added cost for the restructure of the speech language pathologist. So there are contracted services that are being eliminated, and the current 0.6 position is being proposed to increase to a 1.0 FTE. And that was at the recommendation of the Student Services Department and Building Administration. And so that is a net increase of $58,320. There's a restructure of early education staffing being proposed at Clark Wilkins, where an early education director will replace the preschool coordinator. This position will service both special ed and regular ed students' needs, and the net increase for this position is $47,229. The .4 library assistant that was requested last year, but because the budget did not pass, this is not included in the voted budget, so it needs to be added to the proposed budget, meaning it's not in the default. The reductions include the elimination of one regular ed teacher at the Amherst Middle School through attrition, and the decrease in the number of paraprofessionals based on projected student need. So I'll turn it over to Mike now to add a little context to these changes.
Yeah, as we go to the next slide, some of the areas between the early ed director and the student services coordinator at AMS, some areas of focus to put more personnel in the buildings to directly support students, teachers, special ed case managers, pre-K, kindergarten, and teachers is they're going to be focused on these areas as we work with the student service department and building administration. They feel that putting those positions in the building will allow us to support students, paraprofessionals, teachers better by focusing on high leverage strategies and having people in the buildings to support that work, increasing efficiency of paraprofessional support, so we can make sure that our most our students that are in most need have the support that they need, and kind of like role clarity and role responsibility is really important. And then making sure that the direct instruction and the specific interventions that we are providing are as evidence-based and appropriate as possible. And so people were asking a little bit about like, what's the work going to be done, in the buildings with this restructure, and this slide speaks to that as well.
Right. Yep. So in summary, the budget is an increase of 4.2% from last year. The focus is on student educational experience at the building level, administrative support, student services aligned with student need, classroom teachers aligned with projected enrollment, and increased instructional time. For facilities, we're focusing on preventive maintenance, repairs, and security. Transportation, for regular ed, we're in year 4 of the 5-year contract with 16 bus routes. Special ed, we're in year 2 of 5 of the contract, and with increased student need. Technology, we're looking to replace devices as needed, improve network and equipment inventory. All right, go on. So other considerations, I have the AMS roof and unit ventilator replacement project. So this was discussed tonight and approved to move forward to the public hearing. And the other major consideration, as we all know, is the elementary school construction bond project that will be reviewed at the upcoming meeting on 12/5. And then let's go to the calendar. So we're here at draft 2 presentation. You can see the other meetings set up. And we recently had I attended the second Ways and Means Committee meeting, and I know that we have some representatives here tonight. So I can take questions, or if you want to have them come up and address the board first as well. I'll leave it to you, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, let's have Ways and Means come up, and then we can see how many questions we knock out with them as well. So if Ways and Means would like to come to the microphone, whoever's going to represent them tonight, talk about the work you've done so far, and then we can open it up for questions combined to Amy that we may have in this budget, Amy or administration.
Great, thank you. So I think everybody knows who I am by now, but if not, Caitlin Thompson, I'm a member of Ways and Means. I'm here to provide an update based on where we are with the meetings that we've had. So we have now completed all of our subcommittee meetings. We thank everybody for answering the questions that we've had to date. Everybody was very timely with their responses, so thank you for that, as well as the engagement on each of those subcommittees. As Amy mentioned, we did have our meeting on Tuesday this week where we summarized for the greater committee all of those subcommittee sessions. We had a pretty lengthy discussion for each of those, providing the rest of the members of the committee details and questions that were discussed at each of the subcommittee meetings. We do already have minutes to that meeting posted on our website for anybody interested. We will continue to post future agendas as well as we get those finalized prior to the next meeting, which was originally scheduled for December 5th, but with this meeting added to our calendar this week, we will be moving our next committee meeting. So the date for that will be to be determined. We're aiming for about mid-December for our next meeting. One of the items that was discussed was we had, I think, some questions for the board. And we know that there's a couple board members who are designated as representatives. We didn't know what the protocol of the representatives was for attending our meetings. They haven't yet attended any of those, so we just wanted to understand.
Yeah, life happens and life gets busy, unfortunately. So I apologize. I was trying to go to those meetings and we've had stuff every night you've had your meetings, so I apologize. And I believe Jason is the other rep as well. So I know we've both had prior commitments, so it is our intent to go to them, but it's been a very bad, unfortunate scheduling time for
Okay.
those meetings. To pop
So
up.
how should we handle then if we do have questions? Would you prefer us to email you?
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah.
And then we can handle that at
Yep.
a next session.
And when is the next meeting again? You said early December?
To be determined, yeah.
Yeah, so
we need to
we
figure that out.
will make the effort to be at the December one again. Hopefully
Okay.
nothing crazy happens, but that'll be our intent too. And if you want to send us a reminder to the board email, just to have, when you do have your next meeting, that would be
So you'll get the invite, so you'll have the reminder on the.
fair point. Fair point.
You can reach out to the rest of us. I'm sure we'd be willing to step up if you two guys are busy and see between the five of us.
Yeah.
Let's can make it there. I mean, y'all are the designates, I get it, but.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that.
So that's all I have for the update. Thank you.
Okay. Great. Board questions for Amy. I had one, Amy, just you said that the budget would be 780,000 less had health insurance been on a normal docket. But whenever I looked at the numbers up there for Clark Wilkins and AMS admin, where the salaries and benefits, the numbers didn't add up to 781. And I thought that they would have added up to that. So I'm trying to figure out where those increases are.
So what I did is I took the, because it's based on elections. So you want to
Correct.
base it on the current, the proposed budget.
Mhm.
So I took the proposed budget and I took away the 21.8% increase. So it started at like a net zero. And then I increased that by 4%. And then I took the difference between what that number is, because that would have been the 4% number that we would have budgeted versus what's actually budgeted. And the difference between those two numbers is 780,000.
So Steve, can you go back to, it's towards the beginning there. I'll just tell you to keep going back, but kind of just basically seeing where the increases are in the proposed budget. Keep going. And right there. So I see Clark Wilkins administration curriculums 321. That's an increase of 1%. And then I see AMS of 121. That only adds up to 440. So I'm trying to figure, I guess I'm just trying to see where 780,000 is hidden out of that 1.3 million.
So 780 is just the health insurance. That's it.
Correct. But if wages and benefits increases are in those budget lines for CW admin and for AMS admin, that's only 400,000.
Right. And because there's negatives that are offsetting.
Okay. Okay. Got it. Thank you.
some of the wages have decreased actually.
So it must be fairly significant for some of them then.
Yep.
Okay, got it.
Yep.
Let's go to the warrant, the other proposed, others.
The capital reserve fund page.
Which one? Capital or this one? Sure.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. And I don't care either way, as long as legal has reviewed my question about which is the right RSA.
Yeah.
On that, I think you said the new one. Well, no, I just want to be clear. I think you said there had been an update to the RSA since we may have, since Conval did theirs. So if the lawyers think the other one is the right one.
It doesn't really matter.
Okay.
I'm happy to use 198.
Okay,
So
thanks. That was my only question. And
that was my intention when writing the warrant article.
And my bigger concern was to make sure we include language around network, because I don't think Sauhegan did, and it really should include the network too, which would include all the cabling, which for the technology one, which
We left it intentionally
vague.
So,
Yeah, I mean, I think, well, only because I think it said hardware, software. I thought my memory from deliberative was that it said hardware, software, and licenses or something around that. In
Okay.
theory, that doesn't actually include the 80 miles of Cat 5 or Cat 6 or whatever we're up to.
Access points would include the access points.
That's the physical, that's the switch, that's that's not. So if you go all wireless, I guess you have no wire, but
It's not considered hard.
to my,
When I
in
get
most
to the
definitions,
point of writing the warrant article,
yeah,
I'll definitely bring that up to legal.
just a.
No, I appreciate it.
Me too. It's probably.
Yep.
From a cost perspective, if you were to try to use certain grant dollars to pay for some of that,
Yeah.
people would question whether that was part of it or
The
not.
intent, yeah.
That's all.
Thank you.
Yep. And then, when would I bring up the other one that I emailed about the reserving is that tonight? Is that a later meeting? You want to add that?
Refresh my memory, Tim.
To an agenda. So one of the other things, do you already have, and we may already have this, and I'm new here, so please forgive me if that's the case. Prior to 2020, I think, school districts weren't allowed to retain any fund balance, zero. Had to all go back. The statute changed, allowed up to 5% of, I forget, assessed value or something like that, but the board had to put it on a warrant and it had to pass. Do we have that here?
No.
Yeah.
Has there been any discussion of adding that here?
It came up last year after, I want to say it was after the election potentially, maybe just before the election, but it wasn't a formal conversation that we had in terms of, because I believe it was just, we had discussed that the town does it.
The towns have been doing it for a generation. Districts were never allowed to. And so coming up into COVID, there was no cushion. You either were able to do some really good accounting, and thank God the ESSER stuff showed up, but at the beginning, essentially, but we froze budgets. We were like nailed everything down and went, okay, where can we scramble to find money? Because there was no immediate reserve to go to do any of that. The ability to retain a percentage of your unreserved fund balance builds in that has very specific language around emergency use only. You can put other policies in place around that. You need to have public hearings to spend it. It's essentially a global trust fund, if you will, that gives you that extra cushion for, so I just heard, the plan is to have $100,000 per building. That's a decent cushion, but there are worse things that can happen that cost a lot more than that. That may or may not be reimbursed by Primex, for example, and then all of a sudden you're scrambling. So I think from a fiscal management point of view, it makes a lot of sense to at least have that discussion. I don't know based on last year, I don't know the tenor of the community to allow the district to do that, but the town has been doing it for a generation and nobody seems to have a problem with that. And our budget is even bigger than that. And we have just as many buildings, if not more facilities, to ensure we have that reasonable balance to deal with things that come up. So that's all. I think it's worth I think it's worth,
And so essentially this eliminates sending money back to the taxpayers, because when you're looking at, or potentially does, it reduces it.
reduces.
So if we return 700,000 this year, but we wanted to reserve 2% of what our actual expenditures are, that may have eaten up the full 700,000, so we might not have returned any this year,
Up
or
to-
could have returned.
So the board essentially gets to look at that at the end and say, we're gonna hold up to whatever that X is. So the statute allows for 5. The policy we put into place in Conval limited that to 2.5%. So
And that was
not,
the first,
so not 5.
the first statute was 2.5% and then
So,
they increased it to.
Oh, thanks. Sorry. So we were in the second year, I guess, and limited ourselves to the 2.5%. But passed overwhelmingly.
In the revision of the statute, as you said, increased the more contingency fund. But the original statute was less on contingency, more on tax relief.
Thanks.
But they expanded it to a more contingency as you speak to. So that was the second iteration.
So that's all. That's my, I don't know if it sounds like that may or may not have been, but that's because it would have to go on each one, right? I mean, that would give, like Amherst could have one and the others could choose not to, or.
So I think, Tim, for that one, I think it's probably more research is needed than to get into it tonight, but I think I put it on the December 19th agenda, so we can discuss that at that point. If you'll share the link that you sent me, with everybody else.
Will do.
I apologize, because I had a few emails from you, so trying to keep them all straight, so I appreciate the emails. It's not a.
Understood.
Of that, I'm trying to, I think that'll be a good December conversation, plus Jason will be here for it. That's a fuller.
Oh, I agree. I would rather have
I
all
think
5 people
have
here
all
to
5
have.
of us, yeah.
Yep, for sure.
But it is on the agenda for our December meeting, and we'll prep for that when we have our chair's
So
conversation.
since they're here, is that information, because we would want them to, they would potentially weigh in on that too, right?
Correct.
So I'll send you, I don't know if you know what I'm referring, but
I think that's what you mentioned.
it is the other day. Yeah.
But I was trying to figure out.
Got it. Thanks.
Thank you.
I didn't, now I understand. Now I remember. I'll send it to you. That's what that's what it was.
No, you're fine.
Okay.
I think that's it.
Other questions or points on budget stuff?
Yeah, I have a
Gretchen, yeah.
question. So thank you, Amy and all for the work, and thank you to Ways and Means for your time. I know that it's a committee that there's a lot of hours put in that no one sees. So thank you. This budget is tight, and I know we've been working in a default for a couple of years now, and the delta between the proposed and the FY24 is 2.9%. I'm curious if you had to make any reductions between draft 2 and draft 3. If there's any space for that, or if this is, if what you're presenting tonight is, and I don't know if this is a fair question or not. 2.9 feels much better to me, but when you look at the 4.2, 4.7, 4.2, that 4 there still gonna, it resonates with voters when they see it. Well, they're not always remembering, and we will have to do a really good job, and I think we can in educating them, but I'm curious if there are any additional places between draft 2 and 3, if that's
Now,
makes any
I'll
sense.
say, I think it's a Herculean effort that it's 4.2, given the health insurance. Doesn't leave a lot, is that, and then the regulation of it is makes it not that flexible. And so you have a very small portion of what you have control over. And I think we've done a pretty good job of trying to keep it as tight as possible. I think a lot of education of the voters and taxpayers and people in town will be needed. I think, to me, I have 1 or 2, 3 things that I would take a look at. And I would like to converse with, Amy and the other people at the table, about what we could do there. And if it makes a lot of sense, right? But I always think there is a little bit of things that you can do, but if you're looking for substantial change, it's going to be eliminating, personnel. And that would be something that we would have to take a hard look at. And but there are some things, and I would love if it wasn't the 2s, right? And I think you can get there eventually if you just have years of being fiscally conservative and creating the approach to budgeting over the course of time. And but for right now, I do think there's some things that we can do. And if that is something that people want us to take a look at, we will gladly take a look at some things that we can do that as well. But it does start to impact, the building a little bit.
I can't speak for everyone else here. I would be interested to just have a flavor for what that looks like. I'm not saying that that's where we need to go, but I'd like to understand that. That's me. And I don't.
No, and I get that. And that's a fair question, and we can continue to work.
And it pains me to even say, to say that.
Yeah,
I want us to be successful this year. I want the community to be able to support our budget. And if this is, and I support all of the things that you're trying to do. So
yeah, no,
don't misread what I'm saying, but I just want to make sure that we've turned over every stone.
Yeah, no, I think we can take a look at that for sure.
So I'll take one second.
So I think to Shannon, to your point is I think this is where we can recommend things as well. We can say, hey, I think this item needs further discussion, whether it's here, whether it's with Mike and admin going back and looking at it. To me, administrative support, this one's a harder one for me to swallow, adding a fourth administrator in each building, whether it's for special education, whether it's for a separate Clark Wilkins administrator that's going to sort of manage that, or manage the Clark school, I should say. We have 3 administrators that are full-time in each building. I think the challenges of a split building like Clark Wilkins is significant. I'm more in tune with that one, but I have a harder time seeing a fourth administrator being added to Amherst Middle School when we have a very large special education staff to begin with. We have a student services coordinator in the district. Now, granted, we're proposing removing that from the SAU budget, but a fourth administrator in one building is a tougher one for me to swallow. What gaps are we finding where the administration needs the support of that position, I think is one that I'm struggling with most on there.
And we can take a look at some things and come back with draft 3 and go from there.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Terry, anything?
Are you recommending putting it back at the SAU level?
No, I'm just, I find we've seen a lot of feedback in this community about the number of admin across the district at the SAU level. And I think we've done a great job of reducing some of that there and allocating those resources in a little bit of a different fashion. I'm wondering if we have a way to try to do that adding a fourth admin to the middle school seems like a tough one for me to look at on paper. I think it's a tough one for the community to look at and say, do we need a fourth administrative level, essentially a fourth principal in that building? I think that's the toughest one. So maybe it's a title of that position, maybe it's a roles of that position, maybe there's a different way to fulfill that role. But that's the one where I look at that strikes out to me.
Yeah, I'm with you a little bit on that, Tom, but more that I think it may be not now, right? Like maybe there's a phase sort of organizational mix up approach there, because I'm not doubting for a second the needs are great in that building, all over general ed, special services, all of it. My concern lies a little bit where yours does in terms of how will our constituents respond to that. And so that's where I'm curious, if now is the time, if later's the time, or how we can continue to meet the needs or not. So.
Well, and there's a regular education teacher coming off at the same time. So I think that's a reduction of regular education capacity, which makes up the largest majority of students, in lieu of a special education position, which impacts a much smaller subset of students in that building. Again, not that it's not warranted, not that we're still not hitting class size goals. That's where, is this the best way to do that? And is it the best way to do it now? So that's my only consideration for that. But we can certainly discuss that more and let Mike and those guys think about that. Anybody else? Okay. Last couple of items. We'll talk about transportation here.
So real quick, just some direction for the leadership. You'd like to take a look at what would it be to get it under 4?
Correct. Yeah, I think if we can get under 4, I
A
think.
bit of
it's
direction helps,
ideal.
'cause that's,
Yep. No, that's fair. We didn't provide that.
yeah, and so that Mike and I,
Yeah.
Amy, Christine will all do it.
Yep.
What would it look like to get under 4? I just want to make sure that we bring you what you need because we'd like this process to end.
Under 4, I think you mean -4. Yes, that's what we've got. Yes.
3.9, you'd be happy or?
Well, we'll try and get to under.
We'll see what we can do.
Yeah, we'll take a look and we'll bring options to go under 4.
No, it's tough to say a number, but if we can see under 4, that's great. And if we can't get there, then we understand it. And the justification certainly is there. And, is this the best way to do it? And is it the best way to do it this year as opposed to a phased approach this year and next year or something?
One correction from me on when you asked about the health insurance.
Yes.
It's,
Oh, I'm sorry.
I thought you had, I'm sorry, I thought you had one.
It's not just in Clark Wilkins, and AMS admin and curriculum. It's in the other categories as well. There's staff in facilities, there's staff in technology, there's.
Yeah, I guess the numbers, it just didn't look like it was 700,000, but I didn't think about the reduction part of it. So
Yeah.
that was fair. You had me at the reduction part. All right, transportation, Steve, looking at adding some vehicle or a vehicle to a fleet to provide some transportation for extracurriculars.
Yeah, so this has connections with Kelly Braley, who is overseeing the co-curricular piece, conversations that Mike has led with Butler Transportation, lots of feedback from the community. And something that we started a couple of years ago at Sauhegan was the purchase of 2 12-passenger vans. They use it for CT. They also use it for co-curricular. And by having 2 vans, we actually clawed back some instructional time because sometimes teams can go separately. We don't have to early dismiss all of them. And so this year in working with Kelly, there happened to be a time where a staff member at Amherst borrowed a Sauhegan van for volleyball. And then Kelly and I spoke about, and Sauhegan as well, trying to expand our fleet, trying to become more independent, self-sufficient, not as reliant on a service. And no disrespect to Butler, they're facing headwinds regarding staffing, and then Mike has written about pretty articulately. So originally, when we brought this this early, we were looking at a 6 to 10 month lead time. You got to order a van to get it in time. That's where it was a couple years ago. The supply chain has reduced. So I'd like to plant the possibility seed to purchase out of fund balance a 12-passenger van. It would be about $61,000. We can order it in January. And if the budget goes a different way or the board changes priorities, there is no cancellation fee. So just for ish, and I know Amy doesn't like the ish, but I live in the ish. When we use a van, we save about $500 in charter. So the driver is free, that's included in the coach, and then we have gas. So a $500 this year in the fall, we save $2,000 by the use of vans and with our partner Sauhegan. And what also, if we did one van and Sauhegan is looking to expand their fleet by 1, there can be some sharing done. But also, if there is, and Mike gave a 24-hour notice that we don't have transportation, a van would help with equity because maybe 4 or 5 parents can drive, but we have a space for 11 kids who parents can't drive. And so in theory, it could be a coach driving a van for 11 and parents driving 4 or 5. And that creates an equity issue that it's not just reliant on your family. You're picking up what I'm putting down? So we'd like in January, we'd like a commitment to order a van. Plan. This would go in the priorities for fund balance, just so we're clear. And then, but again, if March goes a different direction, there is no cancellation fee, but to get it for September, right, which is volleyball, and the equity piece, that's very so. It's not just one team; it's the equity piece also. And it's about 500 this year on our contract, about $500 a pop. To what we saved, we already saved $2,000. Last 10 years, 6. We're going to pay for itself. Okay. So this was planting the seed. We'd like an action item if the board supports it in January to order, put an order in for a van with planned fund balance, and if the fund balance doesn't come through, cancel away.
Okay.
Cool beans.
Any questions for Steve on that? Terry?
This actually came up in our secretary as well, and Hollis Brookline has some vans that they use, and it's certainly something that gives them some flexibility and some cost savings, and they were hugely in favor of. And so, I think that this makes a lot of sense because we want to support our whole student experience. We want to make these things available to them, but it is definitely
a high cost to have a bus go every time. And when we can't have buses and families sometimes can scramble, sometimes can't. So I think it's a way to provide the programming that we want for our students at a price that we can bear. I think I'm in favor. So.
Common at the high school, I'd say Amherst Middle School will be leading the way for vans in middle school.
I think so. So I think, some of the shared programming that's happened under Kelly Braley's leadership between the high school and the middle school has really benefited from the fleet here. And I could see so much potential for use and for cost savings. So good work.
So we'll bring something back in January with my boss's permission and we'll be in good shape.
Thanks, Steve. The reconsideration committee. So we have 11 folks that have applied to be on the reconsideration of resources committee. So we have 11 applications. That's not a conducive way to go through those in a board meeting. So looking for 2 members of the board tonight that would like to gather and go through those applications and then nominate or recommend 2 of those community members to serve on that reconsideration committee. This will make up the 2 adult community members that are laid out in policy ICL-KEC. And this would be the group that would get together if we have a resource that is challenged by someone in the district or someone in the town. This would be part of that committee. These 2 adults would be part of the committee that would review those resources and then make a recommendation to the board whether it needs to be reconsidered or removed or left in schools as is. We saw this play out at the Souhegan level over the summer. So this is our way of following the policy and having a group in place so that we're not scrambling should something like this come up down the pike for Clark Wilkins or AMS. So any volunteers? I think Jason just volunteered.
I heard it. I saw it. I was a witness.
Raised his hand first. That was quick.
I'm really overextended, you guys. I just, it's not one I can take on right now. So
Totally fine.
tapping out.
Sure.
Carry your eye. Doesn't matter.
I feel like it'd be hard, Tammy, since you don't know.
I don't.
I don't know if it's necessary to know the people that are being considered, but it probably prefer, I don't know what's better or worse. I don't know.
I knew very few of them when I looked at the list.
Couldn't be me
One of them.
for a variety of reasons.
Yeah, no, I don't. Sorry.
No, I think you and Jason are the right 2 for a whole variety of reasons.
And I can be a backup Terry if you can't do it.
And we'll put everything in a Google Drive folder for you and we'll
I believe
have.
that's already been done. I believe
Great.
the link was shared. If not,
Yeah, Chelsea sent us all the link. This has been a long time ago. It was when the nominations opened and she's done a really fantastic job. And I don't think we give her enough credit. So I'm going to use this moment to just say thank you to Chelsea Borden in the SAU office. She does a really good job managing all the variety of boards and she's newer in her role. So
A fresh.
kudos to her.
Lovely.
But I know where it's at in my email, so I can send you the link and we all have access.
Okay, and would you guys like for us to meet and bring it to the next meeting?
yeah, I think the December 19th meeting would be good to have it in place. And then we can just hear your rationale and we can vote on those committee members tonight or that night, excuse me. not
Yeah,
tonight.
I'll get with Josh and we'll, not Jason.
No, it's
Sorry. Woo, you can tell Terry's tired.
And it's
It's been a long day.
have committee of the board, so the meeting will be posted, then you're going in on public and stuff like that.
Okay, so I will get with him and we'll figure it out.
Aren't you making a subcommittee to appoint?
Right, but I don't think they can go into non-public. Didn't we just do that? And
Yeah, I think we're better off, Steve.
they
not-
just hold it, they just have their meeting,
To review the apps.
right?
Yeah, we just review and then we bring the names that we,
Got it. As long as you post the meeting.
do we,
What meeting? Are you suggesting they have to have a posted meeting?
It's a subcommittee
Oh,
of the
that's right.
board.
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm suggesting.
I
oh,
think you're right.
okay.
Yeah.
So we have to make it like a for real meeting?
Do we need to make it a subcommittee? Can we just ask 2 board members to review it
Give us their
and
recommendation.
just give us the recommendations?
I mean, it's not, the board reserves the right to take those we have access to all 11, right? I've been provided a link that has access to all 11, so I've seen all 11. We're simply asking the 2 board members for a recommendation to, no different than the policy committee making a recommendation to the board, that this board then in public can endorse that recommendation.
But the policy committee posts their meetings and
Yeah, that's an.
likely post
Oh,
their
that's a good
meetings.
point.
That's a-
So I think, so there's 2 ways to skin the cat, right? So you're a subcommittee of the board, you just post your meeting, you 2 meet, you go through the applicants, like that's the simplest way to do it. It's just a posted meeting. People can come and sit in the room. Yeah, it's not hard. Yeah, no. Or the other way that I've seen boards do this, is, they create a Google Doc and then everybody kind of goes through and I don't know, but that seemed a little bit more cumbersome.
That's what we were trying to avoid. So let's just make it a subcommittee meeting. We'll officially make it a subcommittee. Jason and Terry post a meeting. Chelsea can help get that meeting posted 7 days in advance. You two can just meet for an hour to look through the applications. And then come back with a recommendation for December 19th.
Does it have to be during any particular hours? Because I know that he teaches
no.
in another district.
You don't even need 24-hour notice, and you can do it via Zoom if you need to, so.
No, you shouldn't.
Okay.
Yeah, you don't want
No,
them.
you don't want
You specifically don't want them in the room.
No, she was just saying it doesn't have to.
No,
be.
but I'm saying you don't even need to check with like any of them to say, are you available to be at?
Well, but
the meeting?
do we need to do it at one of, like, does it need to be at Brick School or at one
No,
of the?
no,
schools?
No, you just gotta tell Chelsea when you're meeting, she'll post.
And where?
What in-
And where? Yeah.
Right.
So like, we could do it.
You can meet at the library.
Yeah.
Which might be a good. Okay.
Yep.
We'll figure it out.
Sorry
All
about
right.
that. I didn't mean to.
No, that's I didn't even think of them as.
Better to think of it ahead of time and not have to go back and redo.
Yep.
So it's all good.
Okay.
Okay, I will reach out and see what his availability is and we will make it so.
Lastly, our last regularly scheduled item is policy JH. Reviewing it for a first reading tonight. Any high level comments? This is about truancy and the truancy policies in the district, making sure that kids are going to school and all the rules and regulations thereof, absenteeism, attendance, truancy, et cetera, et cetera.
Can I paint a little color to that real quick?
Yes.
So the reason this is coming to the board tonight, this is really just a housekeeping item. The Amherst School Board had approved this policy. I can't remember the date. I could look it up. And however, there were missing 2 pages to the policy that was approved and posted. So just to cross our T's and dot our I's, we need to approve the policy in its entirety. It really has no teeth without those final 2 pages and doesn't serve our students or our school district. So that's really all we're looking to do. There was no change made to this. This is just a housekeeping item.
Need to do a second reading of it, or can we just approve it tonight?
You could waive your policy. I forget whatever policy that is. I'd have to look it up. Could you do that?
I mean, I'd prefer if we can just.
Yep.
Whatever that policy is.
Yeah, if you're gonna make a motion to waive, hold on.
You need me to find it?
I don't know if our policy specifically states that you need to.
First reads and second reads?
Let me,
Hold on, I believe you. But give me a minute.
it's our typical practice. It's the 104,000.
Yeah.
Research. Policy mix, something like that.
Oh, here it is, policy development.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Doing so.
So I think we're looking at BGA.
BGAA is adoption and review.
Oh, you're
You
AA.
read that one, I'll read this one. Now, this is policy committee, individual board.
No,
Superintendent.
it does. It is in this one.
Previous board meeting.
Mhm.
Yeah, so it would be suspending policy BGA, right?
Yeah, this BGA.
So I will move to suspend policy BGA, policy development system for purposes of adopting a previously approved policy for which there were omitted pages.
That's pretty specific too.
I will second that motion.
Any discussion on that? Call a vote, all in favor of suspending that policy per Tim's motion, all in favor is approved 4-0. And so now I'll take a motion to approve policy JH in its new entirety with all pages present. Shane
I'll
with
make
the
that
motion, second,
Second.
Tim with a second, any discussion? Seeing none, call the vote, all in favor, Four yeses, none opposed. And that'll take us to the end of our regularly scheduled business of agenda items. I will open it up for our second public comment session of the night, unless you had something to say.
I do have just a question for the board and Tom. On December 12th, there is a budget workshop meeting scheduled. It's optional and it's as needed. And we are wondering if you would like to keep that meeting scheduled or can we cancel that meeting? That's what we're asking.
This, I'm thinking through your question, Mike. I want to look at the December agenda, because if we don't have a lot on the December agenda and we can spend a lot of time devoted to budget that night, I think that would be fine.
I am going to be in Virginia on business on the 12th.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm looking to not have
3 weeks in a row.
Yeah, not have the budget workshop meeting on the 12th, but we can do budget work on the 19th.
I think we're fine doing that.
Yeah, I mean, we're meeting on the 5th, so we'll have all of the facilities piece, which is time consuming, out of the way. So that won't be on our December 19th agenda.
Okay. I think that works. I think we can just.
And we can create the agenda to give us enough time to do the work that's needed on the 19th.
There might be things on here that we can move back to January if we need to.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Great. All right, now I will open it up officially for public comment, our second session of the night. If you'd like to make a public comment, you can come to the microphone. Is this for public comment or representing Ways and Means? It's not on the top. You just hit that button right in the front. Good job. Public comment or Ways?
Public comment, yes. I'm here because I'm on the Ways and Means and I was listening to the budget, but
this is
nothing to do with this. This is as.
Okay, so you can say your name and town and you can go ahead.
Former board member that was here when the hours-based calendar was put in place.
Okay.
So
you say the name and the.
Oh, sorry.
Thank you.
My name is Pete Maresco. I live in Amherst. To see that issue become so contentious was very concerning to me. The whole thought process when that was put in place was that people were concerned about, we had a lot of snow. There's tremendous variation in when school could end. It affected kids that were getting jobs, people making plans for the summer. So to make it a little more consistent, that's when we went to an hours-based calendar. If I remember correctly, we would plan for 175-day school year, but to get the number of hours required, you needed only 170 days to get there. So that allowed the flexibility where if it snows, you don't have to go the 175 days. You have the hours in place, everything's there. And usually what would happen once the snow ends, like June sometime, but once the snow days were over and the end of the year was more predictable, that's when, if I remember correctly, the superintendent, the school would work out when they thought school would end, and they would come to a school board meeting with the proposed end of school, and we would all vote on it together. And if it included the 175 days, fine. If it didn't, we understood that too. But that's what's been in place. That I don't remember how long, but I mean, my kids were still in school when that was there. So they're both out of college now. So it's been in place a long time. It's worked fine. Everybody's been happy. I don't understand what happened, how it is now such a contentious issue that I'm hearing about, lawsuits coming up. It was a very good plan that was put in place. And I totally agree with the idea of being careful how you use the school days, because adding 24 minutes to each day did not mean adding a free period at the end of each day. It was used for 7 classes. The full day was used, and it meant in 170 days, the kids got the learning in. That was the key. And you didn't want to have the flexibility, the unpredictability of when school was going to end. That's all. So that's my recollection. I just want to throw that in, and hopefully avoid a few lawsuits.
Great, thank you. Anybody else? You can leave it on, Peter, that's fine.
Okay.
Meanwhile, if you'd like to speak online, you can raise your digital hand and we will get to you momentarily.
Hi, Larry Ballard, 11 Pinewood. The change from a days-based calendar to an hours-based calendar was a board-driven request, as Mr. Marisco said, in the fall of 2012 and 2013 during negotiations. Just to be very clear, the practice around snow days has been in place since FY15, is exactly what the association and board attended when we negotiated the agreement in 2013, which I think you just heard. And we've renegotiated that in 2015, 2016, 2017. We looked at the school calendar in 2021. And with the snow days having been an established practice for several years, we just, of course, did a 3-year agreement negotiated in 21 and 2022. And that language was not changed. I would also remind the board that the board does have certain obligations around past practice under Article 1 of the agreement. Key component of that change was extending the length of the school day. So that the teachers worked longer work days, and that would help offset and reduce the number of days in the school calendar. I do have to say the insinuation tonight that teachers are somehow not working our full contractual obligation when you know very well we work above and beyond this district is not accurate and something many of the teachers here found deeply offensive tonight. I also do not believe it was appropriate for some members of the board to use this forum of a board meeting to attempt to argue the points of mandatory subjects of bargaining in a public forum. The calendar as written is an either or decision for the board, and it's something I understand well because I helped co-author that language. The concept of either or is embedded not only in the selection in 180 days versus hour-based, but there are multiple places and calculations in the CBAs you all find in the appendix where it's an either or proposition. Last month, I stated I felt this topic was getting near the rumble strip of mandatory subjects of bargaining. And although I'm not presently an AEA officer, my advice to Amy and Grant has been if the board takes unilateral action on snow days, they should take immediate action through not only the grievance process, but to petition the labor board for injunctive relief. Please don't make that a necessity. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Christine?
My name is Christine Grayson. I live in Amherst. I just wanted to thank the board and all the budget committees and our administration that have worked really hard on the budget. Specifically to Amherst, though, this is difficult. I mean, we've been in default for 2 years. I say we, even though I don't have kids in the district, because I feel like, you know, all the districts are my district. And I appreciate, you know, Shannon's thoughts on, you know, maybe this isn't the time for some of the changes we've made. And I appreciate Tom's thoughts on having more administrators in the building because we have struggled with that, you know, optics wise. I absolutely agree that there is a need. I mean, we have a lot of needs. And I just wanted to bring up to the board that one of the other needs we have is our buildings. If you decide to put the Wilkins project or Clark Wilkins, I'm not sure what we're calling it, on the ballot, that's going to be a lot to swallow, even though it's reduced. And I think, you know, over the years, it's gotten much more refined and thoughtful. But if that's out there, that's also really important for our students. And I don't envy the decision you guys have to make. You know, do you put that on the ballot? Do you not? Do you go ahead with these increases? Do you not? I just want to ask that you really think about that because it's a lot to ask the taxpayers. I understand, you know, the health insurance increases, like all of that, but just keep that also in mind too, because if that does go on the ballot, I think it's going to be difficult to pass one or both of those, your operating budget and the project. Thank you.
Thank you, Christine. Anybody else? Seeing none in person. I don't believe we had anybody online, looking online either. I will close public comment tonight. And we don't have a non-public session tonight. We do have a non-meeting as indicated earlier. So that means we will conclude regular business tonight. We will end this meeting and then we'll have our non-meeting as a separate standalone meeting tonight. So with that, I will take a motion to adjourn.
I'll make the motion.
Gosh, no one wants to go home. Jeez. I have a motion from Shannon. Can I get a second?
I couldn't get my mic turned on. I heard the motion.
Perfect. Second?
Second.
Then we're the second. Any discussion?
What's a non-meeting? There's no discussion. It's unobjectable. We have to vote.
There we go. Perfect. All right. All in favor?